Chapter 1917. The Divine King's strength. Jian Chen's heart sank. Even though their side possessed over 20 god kings from various empires, there were no primordial realm experts according to his knowledge. However, the Empyrean demon cult had gained a primordial realm expert. How were they supposed to fend off an expert like that? Even if all the god kings worked together, they probably could not stop a primordial realm expert. The primordial realm was a higher major cultivation level. The difference between it and God King was like an uncrossable chasm. It was rumored that the top 10 supreme god kings on the God King's throne possessed the power to defeat primordial realm experts, but that was only early infinite primes. Jian Chen glanced at the Divine King subconsciously. He always seemed unfathomable in Jian Chen's eyes. When he only revealed the slightest part of his strength, he had almost managed to make the armies of the Empyrean demon cult collapse. Without a single doubt, he was the most powerful expert on their side. He wondered if the Divine King could stop the presence of the primordial realm expert. However, just when Jian Chen thought of that, the dragon robes of the Divine King began to flutter despite the absence of wind. A presence equally as terrifying exploded from his burly body like a volcano. It swept out with might that was enough to shake up the surroundings. It directly passed through the screen of light, headed towards the armies of the Empyrean demon cult, and clashed with the primordial realm expert's presence. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed when he saw this. He discovered that the Divine King's presence was so powerful that it actually managed to stop the primordial realm expert's presence. The Divine King's presence was no weaker in comparison. The presence of the primordial realm. The Divine King is a primordial realm expert as well. Jian Chen was shocked while his gaze towards the Divine King became filled with surprise. He was not the only one. Even the eyes of all the overgods within the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian, and the overgods from the empires widened as they stared at the Divine King in disbelief. All of their hearts churned. All of them were the same as Jian Chen. They all believed that the Divine King was only a god king. Only now did they realize he had actually reached the primordial realm. Experts of the primordial realm were equivalent to ancestral emperors of those ancient empires, and the ancestors of those powerful sections. While all the overgods expressed their surprise at the Divine King's strength, the god kings remained calm. They did not show any surprise at all. No wonder the Divine King remained seated on his throne, above everyone else, before the god kings of the empires. I was confused before, but I finally understand now. The Divine King has already reached the primordial realm. The Divine King probably only broke through recently. Otherwise, the news of his breakthrough would have become public knowledge long ago. A few of the overgods from the empires thought to themselves. Beyond the walls, the presence from the primordial realm expert of the Empyrean demon cult was stopped by the Divine King. The two presences clashed with great intensity, and the terrifying pressure filled the surroundings. Not only did the entire sky shake, but there were even visible ripples through space like it was water. In the end, the two presences reached a stalemate. Neither of them managed to gain the upper hand. Pingtian, let's leave the miscellaneous matters to the people below. Let's play a game of chess and observe the battle. A dignified voice suddenly rang out from behind the Empyrean demon cult's army. A figure appeared on a black cloud as demonic aura and black mist churned around him. His presence was extremely terrifying, and it was enough to cause the expressions of all the god kings to change. The Divine King stood on the city walls. He stared at the person cloaked in black mist and said, "Vice Leader Huayan, I never thought you'd come personally." "Ha ha ha. Pingtian, you've already reached the primordial realm. You're no longer a god king. Since you've come, it's nothing difficult for me to come as well." The person in the black mist laughed aloud. As he spoke, the mist around him began to disperse, revealing a middle-aged man with quite a striking appearance in black robes. The middle-aged man's face seemed slightly evil, which gave people a chilling feeling. Huayan waved his hand and a chessboard appeared in the air. He directly sat down before it, and made a gesture of invitation towards the Divine King. The Divine King remained calm. He took a step and appeared before Huayan like he had teleported. Then he sat down on the other side of the chessboard. As primordial realm experts, they could not fight readily, as the damage caused would just be too great. If the two of them began fighting fearlessly, The terrifying shockwaves of energy would probably be enough to cause heavy losses for the people on their sides, while the fortress would be reduced to ruins. As a result, whether it was Huayan or the Divine King, neither of them wished to fight. It would only increase the casualties. The costs would outweigh the benefits. Is that the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan? Jianchen stared at Huayan. This was the same person who killed the supreme god King Duanmu in the past. It was also because of this person that the overgods who had gathered in God King Duanmu's dwelling dared not to accept his legacy. It was also because of this person that Ling Hogong vanished from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, going into hiding in a place where no one knew. The primordial realm experts of both sides were busy now. Even though they possessed great power, they were unable to interfere with the battle below. Attack! As the three commanders bellowed, the 300,000 men began to move together in their formations. The war had formally begun. Immediately, countless formations were activated among the three armies. They flickered under the dark clouds and emitted powerful pulses of energy. Every single formation was composed of 10,000 people, and a small formation scroll hovered in the center of them. Not only were the 10,000 people able to pour their powers together perfectly through the formation, but they had also become even stronger than before after being amplified. Boom! With that, the sky, ground, mountains, and everything shook. The three armies had formed 30 large formations, attacking the light screen before the wall with their full strength whilst emitting surging ripples of energy. The barrier of light was extremely powerful. Even God Kings would need to expend quite the effort to get through it. However, after withstanding such a fierce attack, it shook wildly. Its radiance rapidly faded. The huge army of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian began to move as well. Under the commands of the Grand Imperial Protector, the army was divided into several groups. A portion of them arrived before the formation that created the barrier of light, and poured their own origin energy into the crucial points to support it. Another group of people stood on the walls. They pressed their hands firmly against the walls as origin energy surged from them constantly. All of it was deposited into the walls. In the next moment, all the walls began to shine. Countless complicated and profound formations appeared. With the support of the origin energy from the soldiers, the formations erupted with great might, shooting beams of energy at the armies of the Empyrean demon cult. Chapter 1918. Yashulian Boom. 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 Immediately, thunderous sounds rang out constantly. The beams of energy from the fortress were blinding, illuminating the sky snow white. Every beam of energy pulsed with extremely great power. However, when the beams of energy landed on the soldiers from the Empyrean demon cult, the demonic aura from the formations blocked it. The demonic aura was extremely powerful. Even after more than a dozen beams had landed, they were still unable to pierce through the aura. The soldiers of the three armies used the black, demonic aura to fend off the attacks from the fortress, while they themselves activated the formations and dealt powerful attacks at the screen of light that blocked their way. The barrier of light reached towards the sky and penetrated the earth. If it did not go, they would not be able to get past it even if they could fly or burrow. The energy of the light screen depleted extremely quickly when faced with the barrage of vicious attacks. The soldiers who provided energy to the barrier paled very quickly, having used up all the origin energy within them. Just when they could no longer support the barrier, a second wave of soldiers went up to replace them, stabilizing the barrier to the greatest of their ability. The soldiers who supplied energy to the formations on the walls were also replaced wave after wave. At the same time, a large number of divine crystals were poured into the formations. Under the dual support, the might of the formations was pushed to the limits. Jianchen and the people from the Dong'an province stood together on the city walls. They looked at the situation below. Jianchen frowned heavily. The 9 armies of the Empyrean demon cult really are powerful. No wonder they can defeat armies that reach into the millions with just 100,000 people. The formations consisting of 10,000 people are erupting with strength at the peak of Overgod. Even the prodigy of the sword sect of the azure-clothed, Luo Yunfei, would only be able to flee before these formations, Jianchen murmured as he stared at the 3 armies. Not only did the people from the three armies manage to display strength at peak over God after pouring all their power together, but their individual strengths were impressive as well. They were deities at the very least. Although the divine kingdom of Pingtian possessed over 100 million soldiers, they only possessed an advantage in terms of quantity and not quality. They were nowhere near the level of the 300,000 people of the Empyrean demon cult. The 9 armies completely consisted of godhood cultivators, but the huge army that belonged to the divine kingdom of Pingtian mainly consisted of origin realm cultivators. The difference in strength between the two sides was evident. Within the divine kingdom of Pingtian, only the royal divine army can rival such a powerful army, Jianchen side and side. The royal divine army was very powerful as well, completely composed of godhood cultivators too. However, there were just too few soldiers. On the battlefield, the soldiers of the Empyrean demon cult had to attack the barrier of energy, while enduring the beams of energy from the walls. Very soon, a few people became overwhelmed, and a few soldiers died. The beams of light penetrated their bodies. On the battlefield filled with shockwaves of energy, it was impossible for their souls to escape. They directly dispersed. The divine kingdom of Pingtian's side paid quite a hefty price as well. They had gone through several waves of soldiers to support the formations alone, even when ignoring the number of divine crystals they had spent. Hehehe. Look at you men. You're offering up your origin energy so desperately. Is it really worth it? Just what benefits have the divine kingdom of Pingtian provided you with that's worth you laying down your lives for? In my opinion, it's better if you use this power to fly away with the person you love, far away from the battlefield where you can spend your time together. At this moment, a giggle rang through the air. It was filled with endless charm, flooding out all the booms in the battlefield and ringing through the fortress. Many overgods on the walls became dazed the moment they heard the voice as confusion filled their eyes. However, this confusion only lasted for a few seconds before they recovered. All of their foreheads became covered with cold sweat as they experienced a sense of lingering fear. Even Jianchen felt his soul jump. He had almost dropped his guard. In the next moment, his eyes immediately began to shine brightly. He guarded his mind firmly as he stared right ahead with shining eyes. The voice did not affect him. The commander of the 7th Army is Yaxi Lian. She's also a late god king and a transformed 9-tailed fox. She possesses natural sexual charm and is skilled in charming her opponents. Jianchen thought back to the divine king's introduction of the 3 commanders. The person who had tried to charm the soldiers just now was clearly the commander of the 7th Army, Yaxi Lian. Jianchen was filled with caution. The charm in Yaxi Lian's voice clearly was not targeting him. Despite that being the fact, he had almost dropped his guard. He had no idea if he could still remain rational if it targeted him. Although Yaxi Lian's voice did not affect the overgods too much, as it did not purposefully target them. However, the soldiers gathered within the fortress were not that powerful. The moment Yaxi Lian's voice had rung out, they seemed to become controlled, and a sliver of confusion appeared in their eyes. Yaxi Lian's voice rang through their heads constantly. It had defeated them mentally in a single moment, making all of them lose their focus. Yeah. The divine kingdom of Pingtian only gives me these many divine crystals every year. Is it really worth it for me to risk my life for just these divine crystals? I have a wife. Why don't I fly away with my wife, far away from the battlefield? Why must I take part in the war this time and offer up my life for no reason? At that moment, many people began to waver. The soldiers who provided energy to the screen of light temporarily stopped what they were doing as well. Their willpower and fighting spirit vanished, and the screen of light rapidly dimmed. Yaxi Lian's charming techniques were extremely powerful. With just that, she managed to affect the minds of the entire army. Sensing the army's weakening morale, the expressions of the god kings on the walls all changed. Immediately, one of them bellowed out. His bellow was thunderous, booming through the heads of all the soldiers. It immediately allowed them to return to their senses. However, after being distracted for a slight moment, the light screen no longer had enough energy to maintain itself. Under the full-powered attacks of the 3 armies, it fell with a great boom. Great shockwaves of energy stormed through the surroundings, blowing away the soldiers who provided energy to the barrier. Everyone was torn to shreds. Before they had even hit the ground, they had already lost their lives. Kill. Without the obstruction of the barrier, the fortress of the divine kingdom of Pingtian was exposed before the armies of the Empyrean demon cult. The presences of the three armies surged as they all produced war cries. They directly charged up to the walls. All over God set out. Kill the opponents. The Grand Imperial Protector called out. He was extremely stern. Keep yourselves safe. Don't travel too far away from the walls. Jianchen warned the people behind him before drawing out the startling rainbow sword. He directly charged at the Empyrean demon cult as he emanated with surging sword chi. Dazzling light flickered in the surroundings and obliterated the demonic aura in the area. He directly charged at the 10,000-man formations with great might. Chapter 1919. A chaotic battle of overgods. When Jianchen struck out, the other overgods did not stand around idly either. They all soared into the sky and charged at the three armies of the Empyrean demon cult aggressively. With that, several hundred overgods flew out from the divine kingdom of Pingtian's side. There were only around a dozen overgods that came from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, while a few dozen came from the neighboring divine kingdoms. The rest came from the empires and the sections. When the overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian's side was mobilized, many overgods flew out from the side of the Empyrean demon cult as well. They engaged in intense battles against the overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian high up in the sky, preventing them from attacking the 10,000-man formations. Immediately, booms rang through the skies while terrifying energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings. It filled the entire sky, causing the sun to dim. The fortress constantly shook as well. However, it was extraordinarily tough, and inscriptions flickered on there, enduring the terrifying storms of energy staunchly. The battles between the overgods was intense. No one possessed a fixed opponent. They fought wherever they went such that the opponent from before would be replaced in the next second. The battle between overgods was extremely intense. In just a short while, the sky became filled with blood and broken limbs. Quite a few people were already heavily injured, or even dead, falling out of the skies as corpses. Jianchen also entered the chaotic battle of overgods with the startling rainbow sword. His sword shone brightly as sword chi radiated from it. He did not show any mercy at all. However, in order to avoid attracting the attention of the upper echelon of the Empyrean demon cult, he purposefully hid his strength. He only used the same amount of strength as when he faced off against Luo Yunfei. However, even with that being the case, he stood at the peak among overgods. Very few late overgods from the Empyrean demon cult were able to match up to him. Jianchen purposefully avoided late overgods as opponents, targeting early and mid overgods instead. He killed them with lightning speed. 3, 4, 5. Very soon, a total of 7 early and mid overgods had died to Jianchen's hands. Whenever he killed someone, he would collect their space rings as well. The senses of his soul had covered the entire battlefield. At the same time, he was paying close attention to Sacred Feather, Houston, Ruijin, and so on. However, the battlefield was huge. Under the surges of energy, Jianchen's senses were affected quite heavily. The power of his soul was being depleted at a rapid rate, but he did not care. The prodigy of the sword sect of the Azure clothed from the Taiye Empire, Luo Yunfei, also demonstrated extremely great strength. He rarely came across a proper opponent among the people that had the same cultivation as him, and 5 early and mid overgods had already died to his hands. In the end, he met a late overgod and engaged in an intense battle with him. Aside from Luo Yunfei, the prodigies from the other empires demonstrated great ability as well. Every single one of them was very powerful, basically the same as Luo Yunfei. The Empyrean demon cult side did not possess any less powerful overgods either. They behaved the same as Jianchen and the others, purposefully picking weaker opponents. Very soon, the empires had all suffered heavy casualties. Quite a few early and mid overgods from the various empires and sects were slain by the enemy. Jianchen could clearly see the 2 early overgods that he had beheaded with a single strike from the Earth Spirit sect through the senses of his soul. A young man in black clothes smashed their head to pieces with a single palm strike. This person also gave off a surging demonic aura, dispersing their souls. Nearby, Protector Gong and Protector Wu from the Earth Spirit sect both became infuriated when they saw the fates of their juniors. They roared out furiously and abandoned their opponents, charging at the young man who had claimed the lives of the two juniors together. Although the young man from the Empyrean demon cult was at the same cultivation level as Protector Gong and Protector Wu, he was extremely powerful. The demonic aura around him churned. The black mist would change as he wished, turning into a huge palm that swept out. In just a single strike, he sent Protector Gong and Protector Wu flying. Killing the two of them will take some time. I'll remove your souls later. The young man stared at Protector Gong and Protector Wu coldly. He no longer continued fighting with them. He went off to find more early and mid-over gods. He remembered the orders from the three commanders that regardless of the outcome of the war, he had to kill as many experts as possible. The mid-over god closest to the young man right now was the ancestor of the Yubing clan from the frigid snow province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Bing Lu gripped his dragon-headed staff. Just when he fought back a mid-over god, he suddenly experienced an extremely great sense of threat. All the hairs on him stood up at that moment. The young man from the Empyrean demon cult appeared before Bing Lu silently. He directly extended his hand indifferently towards the top of Bing Lu's head. A terrifying pressure filled his hand. A gleam of light shone through Bing Lu's eyes. Even though he knew he was not the young man's opponent, he felt no fear. He struck out as hard as he could using his staff with the laws of ice, causing ice crystals to form in the air. Crack. The young man's strength was extremely terrifying. When his hand fell, Bing Lu's staff snapped in half. Afterwards, his hand continued downwards without slowing at all, heading towards Bing Lu's head. In this moment of life or death, Bing Lu's body shook slightly. He moved back by 3 inches like he had teleported, avoiding the fatal strike by a hair's breadth. In the end, the young man's hand basically scraped past Bing Lu's face, leaving behind 5 bloody marks. The young man produced a soft interjection of surprise when he saw that his strike had missed. He looked at Bing Lu in some surprise, but he did not mind it too much. He took a step out, and his hand struck out again. He reached for the top of Bing Lu's head again, as if he wanted to smash Bing Lu's head to pieces. During the entire time, the young man in black was extremely composed. He radiated with confidence. Bing Lu became extremely stern. He could sense the strength of the young man. It was not something he could fend off. Just when he wanted to dodge with his full strength, there was a sudden flash, and the commander of the Royal Divine Army, Xiando, appeared before him. He wore armor as he held a sword in his hand, making it quite the striking appearance. With the thrum of the sword, Xiando swung his sword as hard as he could at the young man's hand. The young man smiled scornfully when he faced Xiando's attack. Demonic aura surged in his hand, and his move that targeted the top of Bing Lu's head changed. It struck the guard of the sword with lightning speed. Bang! The hand and the guard were like 2 mountains that had collided, producing a heavy sound. Energy wreaked havoc, and Xiando's sword was directly blown away. The powerful force ripped the wedge between Xiando's thumb and index finger, covering the sword hilt with blood. So powerful. Xiando was extremely shocked. He was also a late-over god, but the difference between him and the young man was just too great. A single strike from the young man had dispersed the power of laws he had condensed on his sword. The young man remained indifferent. He continued to attack Xiando. Even though he wielded no weapon, his battle prowess was still extremely shocking. In just 3 strikes, he heavily injured Xiando, making blood spurt from his mouth wildly. The deep imprint of a hand had appeared on Xiando's chest plate. Chapter 1920. A sneak attack from behind. Aside from Jian Qin, who had thrown himself into the depths of the armies, the other people from the divine kingdom of Pingtian were not powerful enough. They gathered in a small region. Whenever they saw danger in one region, a few overgods would immediately hurry over. However, basically all of these people were early overgods, and quite a few of them were mid-overgods. It was impossible for them to be the terrifying young man's opponent. In just a few moves, The overgods who had come over to provide support were heavily injured. If it were not for the fact that they looked out for one another, they probably would have died to the young man already. Seeing how great the black-clothed young man was, the overgods from the empires and sects were nowhere near bold enough to charge up and confront him. They all avoided him. No one cared about the lives of the overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Not to mention that many people struggled to even look after themselves in such a brutal battle. They were not in the mood to look out for others. Yang Kai did not choose to look back at this moment. He was far away, engaged in a battle against a late overgod that was just as powerful as him. The young man struck out once again. His single strike possessed extremely terrifying might. Demonic aura covered his hand as he extended it towards the top of Xiando's head with cold killing intent. Xiando's expression changed drastically. He was heavily injured. As such, when he faced the young man's strike of death, he was out of power to stop it. At this moment, a streak of light shot over from afar. With surging sword chi, it moved extremely quickly like a bolt of lightning, heading directly towards the black-clothed young man. Before the sword had arrived, a cold strand of sword chi had already locked onto the young man beforehand, causing him to frown. His hand that had reached out towards Xiando's head paused as well before striking towards the sword chi with even greater force immediately. Boom! The black-clothed young man's body shook violently when the sword chi and his hand clashed. The demonic aura on his hand surged violently and dimmed. Vaguely, a bloody mark had appeared on his hand. It was quite a sight as blood oozed out. The young man's eyes narrowed, and he finally became slightly stern. He turned towards where the sword chi had come from. All he saw was Jian Chen covered in his protective light as he charged over aggressively. He gave off surging sword intent, which turned into a form of deterrence, causing many overgods from the Empyrean demon cult to avoid him. Go heal up in the fortress. Leave this person to me, Jian Chen said to Xiando and the others. He did not say too much before swinging his sword and shooting out a powerful strand of sword chi, engaging in a great battle with the young man. A set of gloves appeared on the young man's hands. They became completely covered as demonic aura surged. He began to fight Jian Chen as the power of laws condensed around his hands. The shockwaves from their battle were extremely violent. It flooded the entire battlefield, becoming the center of attention on the battlefield. It had even attracted the attention of the God Kings from both sides. The young man really did possess extremely surprising strength. He was much more powerful than prodigies like Luo Yunfei, which stunned Jian Chen. Originally, Jian Chen only exhibited strength similar to Luo Yunfei's, but with the appearance of the young man, Jian Chen was forced to reveal even more strength. Only then was he able to hold his ground against the young man. The demonic aura condensed on the young man's gloves was extremely dense and pure. Coupled with the power of laws, every time it clashed with Jian Chen's startling rainbow sword, it would cause the sword chi on there to disperse slightly. In the end, he would only be able to use 80% of his strength. Even the laws of the sword were no exception. Clashing against the young man's laws, their strength would decrease as well. Laws of devouring. Jian Chen immediately determined what kind of laws the young man had comprehended. The young man remained indifferent. He was extremely cold as he said, "You must be Jian Chen, the person who's rumored to be able to make it onto the Overgod's plaque. You really do have some ability, but if you really want to make it on there, you need to defeat me first." With that, the might of the world suddenly appeared. A huge hole appeared behind the young man, producing a terrifying suction. Even the space in the surroundings became distorted. The surroundings immediately dimmed with the appearance of the hole. Even the streams of energy in the air became thinner, while the origin energy in a range of several dozen kilometers was completely drained in that instance. Not only could the hole devour light, but it could also devour all forms of energy as well. If you can block my strike, I'll admit that you possess the strength to make it onto the Overgod's plaque. If you can't, the person who defeated you is Sheng Luo, the young man said to Jian Chen. As he extended a finger, the black hole behind him immediately surged towards Jian Chen. Terrifying suction appeared, and began to devour the laws of the sword that had condensed around Jian Chen. Even Jian Chen himself had been locked onto by a terrifying force of suction. He was pulled towards the black hole, which limited his movements as if he had fallen into mud. Arg! I'm going to kill you to avenge my 2 juniors. Behind Jianchen, the female protector of the Earth Spirit sect with the fan who Jianchen had pinned to the city walls flew over with lightning speed. Her eyes were filled with hatred as she stared at the young man. Killing intent surged. The woman was only a mid-over-god, so someone as powerful as Sheng Luo did not even look at her. He completely focused his attention on Jianchen. Jianchen remained calm, and did not pay attention to the woman with the fan either. The difference in strength was simply too great. Once she was within a certain range, just Sheng Luo's black hole would be enough to easily devour her. This would happen before she would have the opportunity to attack him. However, Jianchen had no good impression of the Earth Spirit sect. Naturally, he did not try to stop this woman who came to die. Sheng Luo, it looks like you've already made it onto the Overgods plaque. May I ask what your ranking is? Jianchen asked calmly. He did not become flustered at all, remaining completely composed. He formed a seal with his hand, and a golden strand of sword chi condensed, shooting towards the black hole as a golden streak of light. At the same time, the woman with the fan charged over. Hatred filled her eyes, and it was almost to the point of insanity. A talisman silently appeared in her hand. It possessed complicated and profound inscriptions that sealed in great power. She directly threw the talisman. However, she did not throw it towards Sheng Luo, who had claimed the lives of her 2 juniors. Instead, it went towards Jianchen, who was fighting Sheng Luo. Jianchen sensed the woman's actions as soon as he had used the Daoyuo sword. His face immediately changed. However, it was too late. The talisman moved extremely quickly, arriving before Jianchen instantly. A great boom exploded. Tremendous, terrifying energy erupted like a volcano, and all of it rammed against Jianchen. Spurt. Jianchen vomited blood as he was blown away. His clothes had been reduced to dust at that moment, and even over 20 overgods around him vomited blood from the shockwave of energy. They were all blown away directly as well. Chapter 1921. Battle between God Kings. The talisman was simply too powerful, having exceeded Overgod and reached God King. It was equivalent to a strike from a God King, which was quite terrifying to Overgods. Even though Jianchen's chaotic body had reached the 11th layer, he would still become heavily injured from such a great attack if he was caught off guard. The golden sword chi collided with Sheng Luo's black hole at the same time. The 2 of them were actually equally matched, and they dispersed together. However, in the next moment, a shockwave from the talisman tore through the surroundings. It destroyed any residual power from the sword chi and the black hole, sweeping out as a visible wave. All the overgods who encountered it were blown away. Sheng Luo's expression changed as well. Demonic aura shrouded his body along with the laws of devouring. He retreated with lightning speed. However, even with that being the case, the shockwave still blew him away, reducing him to quite a horrible condition. All the God Kings on the walls witnessed this. Anger filled the Grand Imperial Protector's face, and he yelled at the people from the Earth Spirit sect. Earth Spirit sect, you are despicable. In such an important situation, you would actually turn against the people on your side. You'd even go as far as to use a God King level talisman. Do you want to kill Jianchen? The 3 elders of the Earth Spirit sect remained indifferent. Elder Mu said with a gruff voice, "Please do not blame us, Imperial Protector. This has nothing to do with us. It's all the traitorous disciple's own doing. We will definitely punish her heavily for this." All her own doing? Haha, great. All her own doing. With just that, you've shifted all the blame to your disciple. An elder from the Taoist sect of Calm Cloud sneered. Even if you search through the entire Earth Spirit sect, you probably won't be able to find many talismans at that level. Do you think this female disciple would be bold enough to use such a precious talisman to kill a supreme overgod of the divine kingdom of Pingtian without your permission? Moreover, the talisman is so precious that it's impossible for a regular protector to possess it. Since your Taoist sect of Calm Clouds believes we are behind all of this, I hope you can provide evidence. If you can't, you're just spewing lies and tainting our name. An elder from the Earth Spirit sect rebuked as his gaze remained fixed in the direction where the talisman had exploded. Earth Spirit sect, You've indeed gone too far this time. The talisman has injured quite a few of our people, said another god king. His face was sunken and very ugly, while his gaze towards the 3 elders of the Earth Spirit sect was extremely hostile. He was the elder of a powerful clan from the Divine Court Empire. There just happened to be overgods from his clan near the explosion, so they had suffered from it as well even though they were not targeted. The 3 elders of the Earth Spirit sect clasped their hands and apologized. They said they would compensate them in the future. And only then did the faces of the god kings from the various organizations take a better turn. Jianchen is probably done for after taking on the full might of a god king level talisman. Although some prodigies on the Overgods plaque can face off against god kings, that's only those who rank towards the very top and possess extremely shocking talent. Moreover, the god kings are only regular god kings, while the might of that talisman. What a pity! A talented person like Jianchen has fallen just like this before he can mature. Many of the god kings that stood on the wall's side while shaking their heads. Pity filled their faces. They did not believe that Jianchen could survive the attack from the talisman. The Grand Imperial Protector of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian rose up as soon as possible as well, directly shooting towards Jianchen's direction. He wanted to bring Jianchen back. You must not, Imperial Protector. Immediately, a God King tried to the Grand Imperial Protector from acting, but he was ignored. Jianchen belonged to the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. Only the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian would suffer losses with his death. As a result, the other God Kings could ignore his safety, but the Grand Imperial Protector could not. As a matter of fact, some of the other God Kings secretly rejoiced when they saw this. They even hoped that Jianchen would be done for. The Divine Kingdom of Pingtian already possessed a primordial realm expert. If they gained another in the future, especially one who had been on the Overgods plaque, and even had a chance to make it onto the God King's throne, the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian would become greater than them. However, now that the Grand Imperial Protector had moved, the Empyrean Demon Cult side would obviously not just stand by. If a God King charged into a battle between Overgods, there were too many uncertainties that could crop up. The Empyrean Demon Cult naturally did not wish for something like that to happen. Moreover, Sheng Luo was still on the battlefield. They could not allow anything to happen to him. As a result, as soon as the Grand Imperial Protector moved, a burly man appeared before him, blocking his path. Yin Wuming. The Grand Imperial Protector's face changed drastically when he saw this man. Yin Wuming smiled viciously. He did not say anything, directly hurling a punch at the Grand Imperial Protector. It was swift and straightforward, without any sloppiness at all. His simple punch possessed a devastating might. It was extremely terrifying, where space would distort wherever it passed by. Terrifying energy gathered in the fist, and just the pressure it gave off made the Grand Imperial Protector shiver. Yen Wuming was already a late God King. Moreover, he was the commander of the 9th Army, having defeated everyone in the Hall of Protectors to obtain the position. His strength was evident. Even the 9 God Kings Jianchen had encountered in the Yin Mountains of Seven's despair paled in comparison. Oh no, Yin Wuming has entered the battle. The expressions of a few of the God Kings on the walls changed. The 2 subjects from the Heavenly Moon Empire immediately flew over to receive him. However, they were clearly too late. With a deep grunt, the Grand Imperial Protector became heavily injured from Yen Wuming's punch, spurting blood from his mouth. The 2 subjects from the Heavenly Moon Empire immediately tried to keep Yen Wuming busy, so that the Grand Imperial Protector would have time to escape. The 2 subjects were also extremely powerful, but when they fought against Yen Wuming together, they still failed to gain the upper hand. Instead, they were suppressed by Yen Wuming. Ha 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 ha, since you're so eager to fight, this king will play around with you lot. Laughter rang out from the Empyrean Demon Cult side. The commander of the 8th Army, Luo Duo, had taken part too. He smiled with bloodthirst. He, I'll test you out as well. Yaxilian giggled. Her voice was filled with a sense of charm, which was enough to confuse and disorientate people. The Grand Imperial Protector's movements had caused a domino effect. At that moment, the God Kings on both sides began to fight as well. Aside from the 3 commanders, there were also a few God Kings from the Hall of Protectors. They were no weaker than the God Kings from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. However, a battle between God Kings was just too devastating, not to mention it was a battle between so many God Kings. As a result, the God Kings of both sides all left the cloud plane and began fighting in outer space. If they were far enough away from the land, even the battles between primordial realm experts would not be able to impact anyone else. In the blink of an eye, all the God Kings on both sides had departed, only leaving behind a few overgods to lead the battle. Meanwhile, the Divine King and the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Qian, remained seated in outer space. A chessboard was placed between them, and the powerful shockwaves were unable to come into a range of 300 meters from them. At this moment, both of them were concentrating on the chessboard before them, as if that was the center of their attention. Every tiny chess piece on the chessboard possessed the vital energies of the two primordial realm experts. On the surface, it only seemed like a game of chess, but in reality, it was another form of a battle. The calm surface hid unimaginable danger. Chapter 1922. Burning Fury. Many overgods naturally saw the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, Jianchen, being struck by the God King level talisman as well. Even though many of them believed that Jianchen was already dead now, it did not cause too great of a disturbance to the battle. Overgods could die at any time in a large-scale battle between overgods. Even the death of a supreme overgod like Jianchen would only lead to a few sighs among people. What a pity! Before we could even decide the victor, you're already dead, Shengluo said with pity. The shockwaves from the talisman had also struck him. However, since he was far away enough and most of the might landed on Jianchen, he did not become injured. Jianchen, let's see how you'll survive that. The woman with the fan who dealt the attack to Jianchen had already backed out of the battle now. She stared at where Jianchen was before coldly. His demise delighted her. Ha ha ha, don't you have the strength to make it onto the overgod's plaque? But so what? You still died to my hands in the end. Even though the talisman came from Master, and killing you was the intentions of Master and the other two elders, you can't change the fact that you died to my hands. Humph, you'll pay a price for offending our Earth Spirit sect. Even if you're a Supreme God King, let alone a Supreme Overgod, the woman with the fan sneered. When she thought about how she personally killed a Supreme Overgod and eliminated someone she completely hated, she felt utter delight. However, her smile suddenly froze. Her eyes widened as if she had just witnessed something unbelievable. She became completely stunned. A bloody body gradually rose up from the center of the battlefield between the overgods. Blood covered his face, so it was difficult to distinguish his identity. However, powerful sword chi radiated from him, along with extremely great killing intent. The killing intent was so powerful that the world seemed to pale and origin energy seemed to tremble. The overgods who fought in the center were all surprised as they revealed expressions of angst. It's Jianchen. Heavens! The patriarch of the Tianyuan clan is actually still alive. How is that possible? Being hit by a God King level talisman is akin to enduring a direct attack from a God King. Yet the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan has still managed to survive. A hubbub immediately rose up in the surroundings. If Jianchen had really died, people would not have reacted so violently, because that was what was supposed to happen according to their beliefs. However, he had actually managed to survive. He was only injured after enduring a God King's strike as an overgod. This shocked everyone, filling them with disbelief. Impossible. This is impossible. How is he still alive? How? Being struck by a God King level talisman while being caught off guard actually failed to kill him. How is this possible? The woman with the fan had already retreated to the walls of the fortress. When she saw Jianchen rise up into the sky once again, she became completely astounded. At that moment, Jianchen's killing intent was so powerful that it was truly terrifying. Just the killing intent had formed a deterrence, causing all the overgods of the Empyrean demon cult to back away from him. Even though many people knew that Jianchen was heavily injured, the killing intent had surprised them all. As a result, none of them were willing to get anywhere near Jianchen. They did not dare to attack Jianchen either. Earth Spirit Sect. Jianchen stared at the woman with the fan on the walls firmly as he said these words through gritted teeth. His voice was extremely gruff. He was fighting against a supreme overgod of the Empyrean demon cult, stopping him from killing more experts on their side. Not only did that save the people of the divine kingdom of Pingtian, but it would also allow the people from the other organizations to avoid dying to Sheng Luo's hand. However, at such a crucial time, he had never expected that someone on his side would deal a sneak attack to him, making him endure the might of a god king unexpectedly. It would not have been too big of a deal if the Earth Spirit sect had launched a sneak attack against him at other times, but really, now of all times? With an opponent as powerful as the Empyrean demon cult before them, there were actually still people who did not see the bigger picture and turned on their own people. This made Jianchen furious. Anger burned within him, to the point where he felt like he wanted to destroy everything. Something like this could never be forgiven. In the next moment, Jianchen directly turned into a streak of light. He did not continue killing the people of the Empyrean demon cult. Instead, he directly charged for the walls, heading towards the woman with the fan. Her actions had completely infuriated Jianchen, to the point where Jianchen wanted to kill her regardless of the circumstances, situation, and even consequences. If he did not kill her, how was he supposed to vent his anger? How was he supposed to calm down? Calm down, Patriarch of the Tianyuan clan. Patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, please remain level-headed. You must look at the bigger picture. You can't act purely on impulse. Many overgods from the powerful organizations communicated with Jianchen secretly. Now that they faced a powerful enemy, not only would turning on each other lower their morale, but the effects would be drastic as well. Protector Gong and Protector Wu from the Earth Spirit sect stopped Jianchen in the first moment. They bellowed at him. Patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, what are you doing instead of killing the enemies? The two of them spoke righteously, completely ignoring the fact that their junior had just dealt a sneak attack to Jianchen. Piss off! Jianchen did not waver at all and roared out. His shockingly sharp gaze was filled with killing intent as the startling rainbow sword danced, emitting a blinding strand of sword chi. The sword chi's might did not weaken at all. Instead, it was even more powerful compared to before. Protector Gong and Protector Wu were already heavily injured. They were not the opponent of such a powerful strand of sword chi, just that bisected them along the waist. Who dares to stop me? Jianchen roared out and opened a path with his startling rainbow sword. He directly killed his way towards the woman with the fan as fury burned within him. At that moment, Jianchen seemed to become an angry beast. He was even more powerful than before he was injured, making him unstoppable. Overgods both on his side and against him in his path stood aside as they stared at Jianchen in complete fear. Heavens, is the Patriarch of the Tianyuan clan really injured? Why do I feel like he's much more terrifying than before he was injured? Is he injured at all? Many overgods were shocked as they fought and observed Jianchen at the same time. Junior Chun run. Protector Wu and Protector Gong called out to the woman from afar. However, as soon as they had said that, a few overgods from the Empyrean demon cult encircled them. Demonic aura surged, and their heads were smashed to pieces, wiping out their souls. Protector Wu and Protector Gong both died to the hands of the Empyrean demon cult. Meanwhile, the woman with the fan had already become pale-faced. Her body trembled as she stood on the walls, while her gaze towards Jianchen was filled with fear. Immediately, she took out a teleportation formation disc and activated it as quickly as possible. White light surrounded her, and she disappeared instantly. Boom! Just when the woman had fled, a powerful strand of sword chi shot over, directly landing where she had stood before, creating a great sound. Jianchen hovered before the walls as he stared at where the woman had stood before. His face was extremely sunken. Suddenly, he swept his gaze through the battlefield and stared at the other disciples of the Earth Spirit sect. The light in his eyes flickered. There were a lot more than 7 overgods that had come from the Earth Spirit sect to provide support. The 7 overgods who attacked the provincial city of the Dong'an province were only disciples of Elder Mu. All the elders who had come brought a few of their disciples with them. Right now, he was considering if he should kill the disciples of the other 2 elders. When the woman with the fan had caught him off guard, she had used a God King level talisman, and Protector Wu and Protector Gong had even blocked him when he tried to kill her. Jianchen refused to believe that this had nothing to do with the elders of the Earth Spirit sect. As a result, Jianchen felt bitter hatred for the Earth Spirit sect. He was tempted to kill all the disciples of the Earth Spirit sect. Chapter 1923. Sheng Luo's identity. Jianchen, don't get carried away. After the battle, I swear I will make the Earth Spirit sect give you an explanation for what they have done. The matter at hand, however, is to stop the Empyrean demon cult. With the enemies right before us, we are in no shape to deal with troubles among ourselves. It will only create confusion, which will only be detrimental. Just when Jianchen was hesitating over whether to vent his anger on the other people from the Earth Spirit sect or not, he heard the Divine King's voice. Jianchen looked back and stared at the Divine King, who was playing chess against Huayan. He could clearly sense two devastating energies clashing on the chessboard. Jianchen sucked in a deep breath and slowly dismissed his killing intent. He tried his best to calm down his anger as he thought to himself, Your Majesty, since you've already promised me that you'll make the Earth Spirit sect provide me with a satisfying explanation, I'd like to see how they do that. I'll let that woman live a few days longer for now. In the end, Jianchen did not end up turning on his allies. However, he firmly remembered the grievance he experienced today. On the battlefield below, the war was extremely intense. Many overgods had died, so there were even more casualties among the ordinary soldiers. The ground had become scarlet red as far as the eye could see while corpses were littered across the ground. Blood formed streams as the smell of iron filled the air. Severed limbs covered the land, which formed an extremely horrific sight. The three armies of the Empyrean demon cult relied on their formations, constructing each one from 10,000 people. 30 of these huge formations faced off against the huge armies of soldiers from the divine kingdom of Pingtian in an intense battle. With over 100 million soldiers, the divine kingdom of Pingtian possessed an absolute numerical advantage when faced against just 300,000 troops. However, when the battle actually happened, it was one-sided. It was not the huge armies of the divine kingdom of Pingtian that possessed the advantage, but the armies of the Empyrean demon cult that only numbered 300,000. The three armies rampaged through the soldiers of the divine kingdom, encountering little resistance. Bodies were blown to pieces wherever they went as miserable cries constantly rang out, leaving behind a ground full of corpses. Even though the armies of the divine kingdom also fell into formations, the 10,000-man formations of the Empyrean demon cult were on a completely different level. Not to mention that just the individual strengths of the soldiers were on a completely different level. Countless soldiers poured large quantities of divine crystals into the formations on the walls of the fortress, activating them all. They shot out beams of white light that crisscrossed with each other, constantly attacking the armies of the Empyrean demon cult. Even though quite a few people had died to the formations of the fortress, the three armies of the Empyrean demon cult were still able to maintain their tremendous formations without them. Even though they became weaker, they were still invincible like before. Sacred Feather, Houston, Ruijin, Honglian, Heiyu, as well as the gods who came from the powerful clans of the provincial city gathered together. They looked after each other as they worked with many other gods to stop a single 10,000-man formation. Gods died at every moment. Even 2 gods from the Dong'an province had passed away, while a few more were injured. Sacred Feather and Houston displayed extraordinary strength. As lake gods, the battle prowess they displayed was no less than regular overgods. They played a crucial and decisive role in stopping a 10,000-man formation. Ruijin, Honglian, and Heiyu all wore armor as they wielded saint artifacts, attacking as hard as they could. They displayed their strength without holding back at all, transforming into their original forms. A dragon and a phoenix worked together with an alligator. However, even with that being the case, the 3 of them were heavily injured and covered in blood. They were covered in vicious wounds. Even though Sacred Feather and Houston possessed extraordinary strength, they were unable to remain unscathed during such a large battle. They had also become heavily injured. Suddenly, all the people in the 10,000-man formation poured their power together, creating a huge black spear. It radiated with a terrifying might as it shot towards Sacred Feather, who stood out the most. Originally, the attacks from the 10,000 men formations were rather scattered. They would attack many targets at the same time, so the people on the Divine Kingdom's side were just enough to fend them off. However, now that the formation had suddenly gathered all its strength in one location and attacked a single person, its might was extremely terrifying. It had reached the peak of Overgod. The Black Spear was enough to kill Overgods easily. Even a prodigy like Luo Yunfei would try to avoid being hit directly. Be careful, Houston called out. The strike was just too terrifying. Sacred Feather was basically doomed if it struck him. Sacred Feather also became extremely stern. He experienced a great sense of danger. The attack had already locked onto his presence, so he was unable to avoid it at all. At this moment a cold voice rang out. Jian Chun, still bloodied, descended from the sky and stood before Sacred Feather. He directly threw his startling rainbow sword at the attack. Swish! The startling rainbow sword collided viciously against the Black Spear with devastating chaotic force, while being covered by the laws of the sword. With a boom, the Black Spear was reduced to pieces by the startling rainbow sword. With a hand gesture, the startling rainbow sword flew back to Jian Chen's hand as a streak of light. He wielded the sword as he radiated with terrifying battle intent as he directly charged at the 10,000-man formation. I have to destroy their formations, or there'll be countless casualties on our side, thought Jian Chen. The 10,000-man formations were just too powerful. Even prodigies like Luo Yunfei needed to work together to destroy them. However, right now all the overgods on both sides were busy engaging in an intense battle. There was no one who could break free from their battle on the Divine Kingdom's side. Even if they could break free, the overgods from the Empyrean demon cult would stop them. Seeing how there was an overgod who wanted to destroy the formations, some of the overgods from the Empyrean demon cult wanted to stop him. However, when they saw it was Jian Chen, they immediately became timid, and they did not dare to charge up. Even a few late overgods were unwilling to try to stop Jian Chen. They just watched him attack the formation. Sheng Luo stood towards the back of the battlefield. Across the great crowd of people, he stared at Jian Chen as he felt uneasy. I never thought I'd actually meet such a great prodigy on the cloud plane. He endured an attack equivalent to a God King's strike, yet he's actually still so powerful. Sheng Luo was secretly surprised. He was a supreme overgod who had made it onto the overgod's plaque, with his name clearly engraved on it. Yet he discovered there was actually still quite a large difference between him and Jian Chen. This Jian Chen is still hiding some strength. You are nowhere close to being his opponent right now. Let's go. This is the end of your training on the cloud plane. Let's go check out some other planes. The other branches of our cult also have wars on other planes. It's said that a supreme overgod has appeared on the He plane as well, and he's 5 rankings higher than you on the overgod's plaque. Fighting him should produce even more evident results in your training. Silently, a middle-aged man in black clothes appeared beside Sheng Luo. He seemed quite dignified, but his appearance was extremely ordinary. He said these words to Sheng Luo indifferently. Are you saying that Jian Chen is not using his full strength right now? Sheng Luo asked in surprise. The middle-aged man nodded. I only sensed his strength when he fended off the talisman earlier. That's right, Jian Chen is extremely powerful. At the very least, he's someone who can claim to be invincible among overgods. There's probably no one who can beat him as long as God Kings don't appear. There's quite a great difference between you and him. The middle-aged man paused there before continuing. However, don't become depressed. You can't forget that you're the Grand Elder's disciple. With his nurturing and the resources of the Empyrean demon cult, your future is limitless. Moreover, the cultivation method you practice directly comes from the Great Elder. If you can reach the 9th layer on that, you'll be able to match the current Jian Chen. With that, Sheng Luo stared at Jian Chen as his eyes became filled with powerful battle intent. He said, Jian Chen, I will remember you. I will fight against you again in the future. Chapter 1924. Unstoppable Sacred Feather. Houston, Ruijin, Honglian, Heiyu. and the other gods from the Dong'an province all stood behind Jianchen. Jianchen stood with his sword, standing before them all with his rather slender body. No matter how great the ripples of energy were, they were unable to move him at all. At that moment, he seemed extraordinarily stalwart. Even though he was covered in blood, it was not enough to hide his invincible, fearless might. He turned into a streak of light and directly blocked a 10,000-man formation from the Empyrean demon cult with his monstrous power. Demonic aura immediately surged from the formation when they saw Jianchen charge over all by himself. The vitality of the soldiers fused into one as they all poured their energy into the formation. After the formation amplified and converted it, the energy turned into an extremely thick beam of black light. Boom! The sword chi on the startling rainbow sword seemed to explode, colliding with the black beam of light. Jianchen's strike dispersed the beam of energy, turning into terrifying energy that wreaked havoc in the surroundings. Jianchen remained as still as a mountain within the storm of energy. His presence rose once again after dealing out that strike. Right now, he was like an injured beast, making him extraordinarily scary. The more he fought, the braver he became. In reality, he was just slowly releasing his strength. The huge formation before him shook violently. Not only did they come to a halt, but they even staggered back as the powerful shock waves rammed into the formation heavily. Jianchen strode through the air, moving against the violent streams of energy. He directly stabbed out, making his sword shine brilliantly and radiate with sword chi. The sword directly cut through the energy, striking the formation without weakening at all. The strike's might was extremely great, enough to cause countless overgods to pale. Vaguely, it seemed to have exceeded overgod and reached a higher level. Immediately, the 10,000-man formation shook violently after enduring Jianchen's strike. The formation scroll they collectively controlled even began to flicker. Over half of the people in the formation vomited blood, becoming heavily injured. Jianchen had directly heavily injured several thousand people with that strike. It was so powerful that many of the overgods in the battle could not help but feel secretly surprised. How is the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan so terrifying? This has completely exceeded Luo Yunfei's strength. He endured the attack from a God King level talisman earlier. Look at him, covered in blood. He must be extremely heavily injured. But why is he still so powerful? Is the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan an overgod or a God King? At this moment, the overgods in the sky began to observe Jianchen, regardless of which side they stood for. The overgods that belonged to the Empyrean demon cult secretly panicked. Before the battle, their commanders had warned them specifically to protect the formations. Once overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian tried to attack the formations, they had to stop them. This was because once the formation was broken, the might of the army would plummet. In the end, it would lead to a large number of deaths. However, when they saw how powerful Jianchen was, they all shivered in fear. None of them were bold enough to try to stop Jianchen. Sending one or two prodigies that were on par to Luo Yunfei would just be sending them to their deaths, and they were unable to immediately free up more people than that. Boom! Jianchen struck the 10,000-man formation again. Immediately, the formation trembled violently. All the soldiers in the formation constantly vomited blood, and more than half of them had become haggard. Jianchen was just too powerful. The 10,000 soldiers were deities at the very least, with a few of them being gods, yet they actually struggled to endure Jianchen's attacks. Oh no, the 6th squadron is in danger. We need to support them immediately. Sensing the danger, a few of the nearby formations gathered towards the region. Demonic aura churned as they charged over aggressively. Jianchen did not give them the time to catch their breath, let alone an opportunity to save them. The startling rainbow sword shone brightly and conjured 300-meter-long beams of light that all struck the formation. The 3 attacks followed each other almost perfectly. The first strike directly caused the formation to sink into the ground. The formation shook violently, almost approaching the limit of what it could withstand. The second strike directly made the formation show signs of shattering. It became riddled with cracks while the powerful, residual sword chi passed through. It cut through the air like rain, claiming over 1,000 lives. The third strike finally destroyed the formation, causing it to shatter loudly. Over half of the soldiers who were part of the formation died to Jian Chen's attack, leaving only 2,000 or 3,000 of them alive now. They were all heavily injured, without any exception at all. In the sky, all the overgods became stunned. Jian Chen had managed to break through a formation in just a few moves with lightning speed, and he even killed off over half of the people there. His battle prowess was so great that it deeply shocked them all. After the formation broke, the formation scroll in the center actually rose up by itself before transforming into a blur and flying off into the distance with unbelievable speed. It vanished in a split second. Jian Chen became stunned because he was just about to collect the formation scroll. He stared in the direction where it had flown off as he became speechless. It was just too surprising. He had never thought that the formation scroll would actually escape by itself, and at such speed. This should be a protective measure the Empyrean demon cult cast down on the formation scrolls, Jian Chen thought. The light in his eyes flickered. Then he charged towards a second formation. Now, the 3 armies of the Empyrean demon cult had understood Jian Chen's power. They did not dare to face off against him alone. Immediately, 3 formations worked together, surrounding Jian Chen in a triangular formation. They used all the power in the formation to attack Jian Chen. However, Jian Chen's power had already reached a whole new level. Even when he did not use his full strength, 3 formations could not deal with him. As a matter of fact, even just keeping him busy for a while was difficult. In a few moves, there was a boom, and Jian Chen destroyed a second formation. Thousands of deities died to him, while the formation scroll shot off by itself as well. However, Jian Chen was prepared this time. As soon as the formation scroll wanted to fly off, he formed a seal with his hand and used the linear lightning release. He turned into a bolt of lightning and pursued it. The formations were extraordinary. They could actually unleash the might of a peak overgod when deities poured their strength together, and they could both defend and attack. If he could get one of these formation scrolls, it would hold great significance to the Tianyuan clan. It could become a clan treasure. Chapter 1925. A god king's ambush. Jian Chen departed from the battlefield as he pursued the formation scroll. However, now that Jian Chen had destroyed 2 10,000-man formations and killed at least 10,000 of the Empyrean demon cult soldiers, he had greatly relieved the pressure on the divine kingdom of Pingtian. It allowed them to mobilize even more gods to stop the remaining 10,000-man formations. Jian Chen used the linear lightning release on some grassy plains far away from the battlefield. He had already caught up to the formation scroll that had fled by itself, and he directly grabbed it tightly. Clearly, the Empyrean demon cult had set up defenses for the formation scroll. The moment he grabbed it, powerful energy immediately leaked out in an attempt to break free from Jian Chen's grasp. At the same time, there seemed to be a mysterious force that pulled the formation scroll along. Even though Jian Chen gripped it tightly in his hand, it did not stop, and it basically dragged Jian Chen along into the distance. It moved extremely quickly, crossing a great distance in a single instance. In just that short moment, Jian Chen was drawn far away from the battlefield. However, he did not give up. He had to get the formation scroll. Powerful chaotic force began to radiate from his hand with the presence of destruction, firmly surrounding the formation scroll in his hand. At the same time, the laws of the sword condensed in the surroundings and revolved around Jian Chen. Through chaotic force and the power of laws, Jian Chen managed to suppress the power from the formation scroll completely. Finally, the formation scroll's resistance grew weaker and weaker before completely vanishing. It laid in Jian Chen's hand quietly as if it had lost all of its power. However, Jian Chen still did not drop his guard. He had never seen a formation scroll that could run away by itself. He kept the chaotic force and the laws of the sword around it just in case. At this moment, Jian Chen's face changed slightly. He suddenly raised his head towards the sky. A few formation banners descended rapidly as streaks of light in the sky, forming a great formation around him in a split second. It covered a region of 10,000 kilometers, locking down the space around Jian Chen and trapping him there. The scene around Jian Chen immediately changed when the formation was activated. It turned into a desert filled with yellow sand that extended as far as the eye could see. At the same time, a blade that shone with great resplendence suddenly appeared behind Jian Chun. Terrifying energy was compressed into the blade. It possessed the power to cut through space, cleaving towards Jian Chen's head mercilessly. Not only was the strike fast, but it was also accurate and vicious. It wanted to slice Jian Chen's soul to pieces in a single blow. Moreover, the energy within it was tremendous and extremely terrifying, and it made even space distort. The blade basically appeared at the same time as when the formation had activated. The enemy wanted to claim Jian Chen's life by catching him off guard. However, Jian Chen was far greater than he ever was in the past. He was already on guard when he saw the formation banners descend from the sky. A gleam of light shone through his eyes as he became extremely stern. He did not hesitate at all. A large quantity of chaotic force surged out from his chaotic Niden, filling every inch of his body as he pushed the power of his chaotic body to its absolute limit. At the same time, chaotic force seemed to burn on his startling rainbow sword. Along with the power of laws, he slashed behind him without any hesitation at all. Jian Chen understood just how powerful the ambusher was, so he used his full strength in the strike without hiding anything at all. Finally, at this moment, he revealed the strength of the 11th layer of the chaotic body. Boom! The startling rainbow sword collided with the glowing bald. Just like the collision between two comets, a great explosion erupted. Terrifying energy surged into the surroundings, causing the space there to twist heavily. Jian Chen drifted backwards after the strike as blood oozed from the corner of his mouth. He had endured a strike from a God King level talisman after being caught off guard earlier, so he was already injured. Even though he had suppressed the wounds, he had not recovered from them yet. Now he had clashed with such a powerful expert. Naturally, it would affect the condition of his body and worsen his injuries. As a result, blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Like a leaf, Jian Chen only stopped after drifting several hundred meters away. His face was emotionless as he stared coldly ahead. A man who wielded a blade appeared there silently. He wore a mask. The mask produced a strange pulse. Not only did it block senses of the soul, but it also hid the presence of the wearer. As for the person's strength, he was a true God King. A God King was an expert who had reached the apex in a divine kingdom. Their status was extremely great, and they would be venerated by all. Even in those ancient empires, God Kings were people who could act as they wished. They were subjects to imperial families, and in large sects like the Earth Spirit sect, they were elders who held authority. You're not a part of the Empyrean demon cult. Who are you? Jian Chen hovered in the air and spat out a bloody mess. He silently circulated his chaotic force to heal as he stared at the person before him. The person did not practice a cultivation method from the Empyrean demon cult. In addition, even if the God Kings of the Empyrean demon cult wanted to kill him, there was no need to conceal their appearance. As a result, he was certain that the person before him was a God King on his side. Seeing how he even concealed his presence, he was clearly worried he would be recognized if it leaked out. The mysterious God King's mask revealed a pair of eyes that were filled with shock. He stared at Jian Chen and said, "I've underestimated you. I never thought you'd actually be so powerful. You've received an attack from me up front, and you've only suffered some small injuries. As for my identity, there's no need for you to know. All you need to know is that I'm here to kill you." The masked God King no longer said anything else. He appeared before Jian Chen like he had teleported as he swung the blade with tremendous energy towards Jian Chen's head. He wanted to end the battle in a single stroke and kill Jian Chen cleanly. Jian Chen roared out. His hair fluttered from his surging presence alone. He unleashed his full strength to receive the attack. The trapping formation had already enveloped the space, locking down the region. It had turned into a firm jail, so Jian Chen was unable to escape at all. As a result, all he could do was put his all into the battle. Jian Chen had already equipped his God artifact armor. He needed to use everything he had when he faced a God King while injured. He could not afford to hide anything. Daoyuo sword. Jian Chen used the Daoyuo sword right from the start. Not only did the golden sword qi contain his comprehension of the laws of the sword, but it also contained the power from the 11th layer of his chaotic body. As a result, the sword Qi's might surpassed the limits of Overgod and reached God King in the end. Faced with Jian Chen's surprising attack, the masked God King became shocked. He could clearly sense just how powerful the sword Qi was. He could not help but become amazed. Was this the power an Overgod was supposed to possess? However, even though Jian Chen's strength astounded him, he did not show any mercy at all. The blade in his hand collided with the golden sword Qi with devastating power. Chapter 1926. The Ambusher. With a loud boom, a single strike from the masked God King dispersed Jian Chen's golden sword Qi. Space trembled as energy rampaged. A light flickered around the masked God King. He used the power of laws to protect himself, easily enduring the shockwave from the attack. He immediately dealt out a second strike after the first. He charged at Jian Chen with lightning speed as terrifying energy condensed on his blade. He swung it as the power of laws revolved around it. Jian Chen's eyes shone, and his gaze became extremely sharp as if sword Qi shot out from them. It was shocking. Chaotic force permeated his surroundings. Not only did he experience no fear when faced against a God King, but his battle intent surged instead. He roared out and directly charged up with the startling rainbow sword, engaging in a battle with the masked God King. Jian Chen was extremely powerful after breaking through to the 11th layer. He was invincible amongst overgods. Even when he faced this God King, he was able to put up a fight despite being injured. The two of them fought with great intensity, to the point where even the sun dimmed. The great shockwaves of energy rampaged through the formation space, causing it to shake. The masked God King became more shocked and filled with disbelief the more they fought. Jian Chen's strength had completely exceeded anything he had expected. Not only did Jian Chen manage to continue fighting on equal terms after so long, but he even fought more and more viciously as time went on. The blood on Jian Chen did not even seem like it came from him. He was clearly very heavily injured, but he did not seem like that at all. His presence did not weaken even in the slightest. The reason why Jian Chen possesses such terrifying battle prowess is all because of that strange energy. What is that energy for it to be so powerful? He's clearly not a God King, yet he can hold his ground against one. What outstanding cultivation method do you need to be able to cultivate such great energy? The masked God King thought quickly. At that moment he felt extremely curious about Jian Chen's cultivation method. I can't drag it out any longer. I must finish the battle fast, just in case something happens. The masked God King began to panic slightly when he saw how he could not defeat Jian Chen after quite a while. He immediately made up his mind and used a battle skill. Suddenly, the might of the world descended. The masked God King raised his blade high over his head as endless energy condensed rapidly. Terrifying pressure filled the surroundings, causing space to thicken. In just a short instance, the God King had charged up his battle skill. He directly swung his blade that had extremely terrifying power at Jian Chen. The surroundings seemed to dim when he struck out. The energy on the blade transformed into a mighty torrent that directly surged towards Jian Chen with devastating power. The strike was extremely frightening. Wherever it passed by, space would distort and origin energy would disperse. Space seemed like it was about to rip at any time. A huge, bottomless chasm had even appeared on the ground. Jian Chen became extremely serious. A God King using a battle skill was so powerful that he experienced great danger. Tai sword technique. Jian Chen formed a seal with his hand, and he fused with his sword. He shot off as a huge, resplendent streak of sword Qi. At the same time, a finger-sized strand of sword Qi suddenly appeared over his head. As soon as the sword Qi appeared, it radiated with shocking sword intent, making it extremely frightening. However, the battle skill the masked God King used possessed the might of the world, so the sword Qi did not stand out much. Boom! A God King's battle skill was just too powerful. The two attacks collided, and Jian Chen was sent flying as blood spurted from his mouth. A white mark had appeared on the armor he was wearing. Even though the armor no longer possessed the powers of a god artifact, it was still tough. As a result, even a battle skill from a God King was unable to damage it at all. However, all the force within the strike was transmitted into Jian Chen's body. just that worsened Jian Chen's wounds. However, at the moment the two attacks clashed, the tiny strand of sword qi above Jian Chen's head turned into a streak of white light that punched through the storm of energy at a speed even faster than lightning. It headed directly towards the God King's forehead. The sword qi moved just too quickly. It used the might of the battle skill and the rampaging energy as a cover, so the masked God King failed to notice it at first. As a result, it was too late when he noticed it. Spurt. The sword qi directly shot into the masked God King's forehead, leaving behind a bloody hole. Arg! The masked God King shrieked out in pain while the might of a God King condensed around him dispersed at that moment. Even his blade fell to the ground. He clutched his head with both hands as he shrieked out in excruciating pain while his face became extremely pale. The mask on his face shattered with a clink, revealing an old face. He was an old man, and his face was covered in wrinkles. However, the muscles on his face were all distorted as the pain from his soul made his body tremble violently. I never thought his soul would remain intact after taking on a strand of profound sword qi. God Kings really are powerful. Jian Chen climbed to his feet in the distance with a pale face. He silently circulated his chaotic force as he made his way towards the God King slowly. Blood constantly dripped from his body, leaving behind a blood trail as he advanced. Very soon, Jian Chen arrived before the shrieking God King. However, when he saw the God King's appearance, he was stunned at first. Then his face became extremely cold. Originally, he believed the God King who had ambushed him was one of the elders from the Earth Spirit sect. After all, he had completely fallen out with the Earth Spirit sect after the woman with the fan launched a sneak attack against him. As a result, it made sense if the elders of the Earth Spirit sect wanted to kill him. However, he had never thought that the God King who trapped him here first before trying to kill him would actually be this person. I have no grievances with your Taoist sect of calm clouds. Why do you want to kill me? Jian Chen stared at the old man coldly as he spoke with a very frigid voice. The old man was one of the elders from the Taoist sect of calm clouds. Jian Chen had many guesses as to who the God King was. He had considered the possibility that he was not from the Earth Spirit sect, and from some other organization instead. However, he had never thought it would be an elder of the Taoist sect of calm clouds. In the main hall before, the Taoist sect of calm clouds were the only people who appeared amiable to him. They even stood on his side to discredit the elders of the Earth Spirit sect. Chapter 1927. Slaying the God King. Tell me, why do you want to kill me even though I have no grievances with the Taoist sect of calm clouds? You even used a God King level trapping formation to cut off all chances of me escaping. You want to kill me no matter what, Jian Chen growled. His voice was extremely cold as killing intent and fury built up inside him. The God King trying to kill him did not come from the Earth Spirit sect, nor did he come from some other organization. Instead, he came from the Taoist sect of calm clouds that had behaved most amiably to him. This was just too surprising. By now, the elder of the Taoist sect of calm clouds had already suppressed the heart-wrenching pain from his soul. After he realized that Jian Chen had learned his identity, his face immediately became extremely ugly. At the same time, he felt much disbelief. He had never thought that not only would he fail to kill Jian Chen with his strength, but he would even end up heavily injured with his identity exposed instead. After all, he was not someone who had just become a God King. Instead, he had remained as an early God King for over 100,000 years, reaching the peak of early God King. He was about to break through to mid-God King. Jian Chen, since you already know who I am, there's no need to say anything else. Let's fight. The only way you can leave this place today is by killing me, the God King said coldly. He took out a pill from his space ring as quickly as possible, and ingested it before attacking Jian Chen again with his blade. My identity has been exposed. I have to kill Jian Chen today no matter what. The elder made up his mind about killing Jian Chen when he struck out. If his identity had not been exposed, he still could have chosen to retreat. However, he could not choose to retreat now. Otherwise, there would be endless problems. He did not possess a body as tough as Jian Chen's. Now that his soul was injured, his battle prowess was directly affected as well. He was no longer as powerful as he was during his peak. Jianchen channeled his chaotic force as he guarded his body with light. The startling rainbow sword exploded brightly as he engaged the elder of the Taoist sect of calm clouds. In comparison to the injured elder, Jianchen's battle prowess did not weaken at all. Even though his wounds were very deep, and he was covered in blood, he had the support of the chaotic body, which allowed him to unleash his full strength even when heavily wounded. Jianchen repelled the elder's attacks as he ingested a soul recovery pill quickly to replenish the power of his soul he had expended when he used the profound sword qi. Although he could send out 2 strands of profound sword qi each time, the power in his soul would be drained clean if he did that. At such a time, he would be reduced to his weakest state. If he could not kill the God King with that, he would definitely become the person who died instead. As a result, Jianchen was only bold enough to use a single strand of profound sword qi. He needed to recover 80% of the power of his soul before he would use the second strand. "You want to kill me for my cultivation method, right?" Jianchen yelled at the elder from the Taoist sect of calm clouds. Their battle was extremely intense, where energy rampaged through the air like waves. It was extremely ferocious. Both of them received wounds of varying deepnesses. The elder's blade struck Jianchen multiple times, to the point where Jianchen would spit blood. His organs had been shaken to pieces. The elder from the Taoist sect of calm clouds had also received rather heavy wounds. His body was covered with vicious slashes while he had also been impaled in the chest. His blood scattered across the sky. Every single drop of it gave off powerful pulses of energy. However, as the battle went on, the elder's wounds rapidly worsened, causing his battle prowess to become weaker and weaker. The piercing pain from his soul affected him greatly. If he were not a God King and possessed an extremely powerful soul, just the strand of profound sword qi would have been enough to claim his life. Suddenly, the elder bellowed out. Invisible flames seemed to sprout up from his body, causing his presence to rapidly increase. He had chosen to burn his vitality for greater strength. At the same time, he used a battle skill again. He used his blade to cut through space as a blur, swinging it towards Jianchen with the might of the world. At the same time, he said coldly, "We're just shifting the blame of your death to the Earth Spirit sect. Once you're dead, no one will think it was our Taoist sect of calm clouds that killed you. They'll only think of the Earth Spirit sect. But don't worry, Jianchen. Although you're going to die to my hands today, our Taoist sect of calm clouds will work with the divine kingdom of Pingtian to attack the Earth Spirit sect together in the future. It'll be like avenging you. Is that the case? However, I won't let the schemes of your Taoist sect of calm clouds succeed. I will deal with my own grievances with the Earth Spirit sect. There's no need for your sect to interfere," Jianchen said coldly. At this moment, he had just replenished all the power of his soul he consumed through the profound sword qi using the soul recovery pill. Seeing the elder's blade approach him with the might of a battle skill, Jianchen suddenly put the armor on him away. He used his body to endure the devastating strike, while he pushed the defense of his chaotic body to its limits. Spurt. Blood splashed as the blade passed through Jianchen's body with frightening power. The power had almost cleaved Jianchen in half, causing him to constantly spit blood while his face became extremely pale. Moreover, a great power that belonged to a God King rapidly spread through his body. It directly headed towards his soul, wanting to destroy it. Jianchen coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood, but his lips curled into a cold smile very soon. With a thought, surging sword intent suddenly appeared, and the finger-sized profound sword qi appeared above his head once again. However, there was not just a single strand this time but 2. The elder's soul was already injured. Coupled with the burning of his vitality, his soul had become even weaker. Jianchen refused to believe he had the ability to take on the 2 strands and survive. Jianchen did not feel completely confident about killing a God King with a single strand of profound sword qi, but he did when he used 2 strands. The elder of the Taoist sect of calm clouds sensed the danger when he saw the strands of profound sword qi, and his face suddenly changed. However, he did not have the time to react at all. The 2 strands of profound sword qi shot out at the same, disappearing into his forehead. The elder's body immediately shuddered violently while his weakened soul directly shattered from the 2 strands of profound sword qi. It dispersed into the surroundings, having been wiped out. A god king died just like that, slain by an overgod. At the same time, the power of Jian Chen's soul was completely depleted. He felt the world spin around him as he felt drowsy. Then he collapsed onto the ground powerlessly. His chest heaved heavily. The God King's power continued to rampage within him, directly surging towards his soul. Jian Chen closed his eyes as he laid on the ground powerlessly. He used the last of his willpower to control his chaotic force and resistance, wiping out as much of the power as he could. Boom. At this moment, with a loud sound, the trapping formation the elders of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds set down shattered. A woman in a green dress slowly walked over from outside. The woman was not old. She only seemed to be in her 20s. She possessed an alluring beauty, where every action and word from her possessed a fatal level of charm. In particular, the light in her eyes constantly changed. At times, it was gentle like water, charming and extremely pleasant as if it could melt the hearts of all men. At other times, it was extraordinarily cold, like the unmeltable polar ice caps, filled with heavy killing intent to the point where it was impossible to stare into them directly. Jian Chen opened his eyes as he laid on the ground. When he saw the woman, his eyes suddenly narrowed and he cried out inside, "Commander of the 7th Army, Yashi Lian." Chapter 1928. Yashi Lian's intentions. The curvy, beautiful young lady in a green dress was the commander of the 7th Army from the Empyrean demon cult, Yashi Lian. According to the Divine King, this woman was transformed from a nine-tailed fox. The moment Jian Chen recognized her as Yashi Lian, his mind temporarily blanked out. He sighed gently and slowly closed his eyes. His heart sank completely. He had just killed a God King elder from the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds who wanted to claim his life, avoiding danger. However, he never thought someone even more terrifying would appear before he could even catch his breath. If he faced an early God King, he might be able to put up a fight, but Jian Chen had no chance at victory against the 7th commander of the armies from the Empyrean demon cult. As a matter of fact, he could not even escape from Yashi Lian. Not only was Yashi Lian a late God King, but she was also a commander of one of the Empyrean demon cult's armies. Every single commander had fought their way through the Hall of Protectors, defeating all the God Kings there to obtain their position. Since she could become the commander of the 7th Army, she was naturally extremely powerful even among late God Kings. Even if Jian Chen was at his peak condition, he would not be able to fight off someone like that, let alone now. Yashi Lian made her way to Jian Chen's side at a steady pace with gentle eyes. She studied Jian Chen closely with her enchanting eyes as a plain smile gradually appeared on her alluring face. Her smile was like 100 flowers blooming, filled with charm as if it was the most beautiful scene in the world. It was a fatal attraction towards men. "Little brother, you must be Jian Chen, the person rumored to be able to make it onto the Overgod's plaque." Yashi Lian squatted down beside Jian Chen and said gently. Her voice seemed to be filled with charm. Her words were nothing special, but it just happened to be enough to trigger the lust of men. "He, I never thought you can even kill God Kings. Little brother, you sure have hidden your strength well. TSK, you killed a God King as an overgod and one that was only a step away from mid-God King in particular. If this makes it out, it'll shock the entire Saints world." Yashi Lian continued as she giggled. She was charming. When Jian Chen heard her voice, he almost dropped his guard seeing how the power of his soul was basically drained now. He was almost enchanted by the charm in her words. Jian Chen suddenly bit the tip of his tongue, and the intense pain allowed him to become slightly more clear-headed. His eyes suddenly snapped open, and he stared at Yashi Lian with a sharp, cold gaze. He said, "I never thought that you, the commander of the 7th Army, would appear right after I've killed the elder from the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds. Yashi Lian, you must have come especially for me. I never thought that a mere overgod like me would attract the attention of the commander of the 7th Army." Ehehe, Yashi Lian giggled. Coupled with her natural charm, her giggle seemed to be the most beautiful thing in the world. Jian Chen immediately closed his eyes, no longer looking at her face. Her smile was pretty, but it was a fatal poison. "Little brother, you underestimate yourself too much. I'm not the only one who has been noticing you. There are also the other two commanders, Yan Wuming and Luo Duo. However, I'm different from them. They want to finish you off as soon as possible, whereas Yashi Lian paused when she reached there. A demonic, red light suddenly flashed through her enchanting eyes, and her lips curled up into a bewitching smile. I naturally want to save you. Save me. Jianchen opened his eyes and stared at Yashi Lian indifferently. He sneered. Do you think I'm as easy to trick as a child? He. I knew you wouldn't believe me, so let me show you so that you believe me. I'll take you away right now. Yashi Lian smiled. With a wave of her hand, a powerful force surrounded Jianchen and took him away in a single instance. However, they did not head towards the divine kingdom of Pingtian, nor did they head towards the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult located behind the battlefield. Jianchen was completely immobilized now that the powerful force from a late god king surrounded him. Yashi Lian had even sealed up his cultivation, and he could not use his profound sword chi either since the power of his soul was completely drained. Right now he was completely powerless in Yashi Lian's hands. He was at her mercy now. Despair did not fill Jianchen's eyes. Naturally, he was unable to use the few soul recovery pills he had left, so he just shut his eyes and tried to recover the power of his soul as quickly as possible. Naturally, he did not believe Yashi Lian's words. She definitely had other plans in mind. He could sense the shockwaves of energy from the various god kings from outer space. However, at a time like this, the people on the divine kingdom's side struggled to even keep themselves safe. They devoted themselves to the battle, unwilling to become careless at all. Naturally, they would not spare the effort to observe the situation below. In other words, even if they learned that Yashi Lian was taking him away, none of them would come to save him. This was because there was not a single god king who was Yashi Lian's opponent alone, even if they were also late god kings. As a result, it was impossible for Jianchen to receive any aid from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. At this moment, Jianchen's face suddenly paled even more, and he almost fainted. The power of his soul he had just recuperated after so much difficulty was suddenly all drained. Without a single drop left, Jianchen avoided falling unconscious through his great willpower. However, he was instead more relieved now, compared to how nervous he was when he first encountered Yashi Lian. Yashi Lian moved extremely quickly. A while late, after traversing a great distance, she brought Jianchen to a gloomy cave, and gently placed him down on the cold, damp ground. Little brother, look, aren't I saving you? Don't worry, I've chosen an extremely well-hidden place. No one can find here. There are only the two of us here. Yashi Lian gently stretched her body. She stared at Jianchen charmingly, as if she wanted to enchant his soul. Afterwards, she gently laid down on him. Over half of her dainty body rested on Jianchen. She smiled faintly as she pressed her beautiful face with exquisite features before Jianchen. Their faces were only an inch apart, almost stuck together. Let alone smelling Yashi Lian's fragrance, Jianchen could even sense her gentle breath at such proximity. As she breathed, warm air would rush across his face. Yashi Lian, you're already a late god king, while I'm just an overgod. Even if you want to absorb my essence, you should find an expert on the same level as you and not me. With my current level of cultivation, I probably won't be able to provide you with anything at all, Jianchen said coldly. He had already guessed Yashi Lian's intentions, so he was not surprised. Yashi Lian used her fingers to gently stroke down Jianchen's face, all the way to his chest. She twirled her finger on his bloodied chest as she smiled coquettishly. Little brother sure is smart, to know what I want to do. However, don't blame sister. You have to know that even though I've saved you, I haven't saved you for nothing. I require compensation. Little brother's powers just happen to be very strange and very powerful. Although I've never seen this power before, my instincts tell me that it'll be extremely beneficial to me. I need this power so you can compensate me with that. Chapter 1929. Fairy How You in the northern region. Jianchen sneered and scoffed. You said you would save me, but you're still going to kill me in the end. Is this what the commander of the 7th Army from the Empyrean demon cult does? Yashi Lian giggled. She rested half of herself on Jian Chen and gently wriggled her body. Her seductive movements were enchanting as lust appeared in her eyes. She slowly stroked Jian Chen's face with her slender hand as she said sweetly, "You can't talk to me like that, little brother. I really do want to save you when I said that, so how can I kill you? After all, you'll bring me so many benefits that I'll never mistreat you. All I need to do is absorb your power. It'll only cost you some of your vitality. Moreover, the method I'm going to use on you will definitely be different from other people. Do you know how I used to absorb the vitality of other men?" Before Jian Chen could reply, Yashi Lian stared into Jian Chen's eyes and continued, "When I absorbed the vitality of other men in the past, I directly planted my head against their heads. However, all of them died without any exception. However, I'll use a gentle method with you. I'll guarantee you that not only will you feel no pain during the process, but you'll even feel great pleasure instead. I'll let you truly experience the joys of being a man." Yashi Lian's voice was extremely seductive as if it was filled with glamour. Anything she did or said was enough to provoke the flames of desire in a man. Even Jian Chen found it rather difficult to endure Yashi Lian's charm now that the powers of his soul were completely drained. Her words seemed to become a bewitching voice in his head, booming through there, and attacking the last portion of clarity. He protected as if it wanted to destroy his rationality. In his body, his blood flowed extremely quickly. At the same time, a flame that he had buried extremely deeply burned brighter and brighter. "Little brother, you're the first man I'm treating like this. Do you think I'm good to you? But you don't have to worry too much. I can tell that your body is extremely tough, where your regeneration is far greater than anything I've seen before. As a result, you won't die after I absorb your vitality. And if you perform to my satisfaction, I'm even willing to make an exception and take you under me as the only person who serves me." Yashi Lian giggled as her eyes shone while staring into Jian Chen's. With Jian Chen's extremely great regeneration, he could become an exceedingly great human cauldron that could assist her cultivation. "Yashi Lian, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. Since you can tell the energy I use is extremely powerful, you should naturally understand that no regular body can endure it. Do you believe that you'll fail to benefit at all if you try to absorb my energy, and you'll become heavily injured instead? You'll only end up harming yourself in the end," said Jian Chen. At the same time, he began to panic inside. He had sent the remaining power of his soul into his space ring when Yashi Lian carried him away, crushing the jade talisman that Fairy Hao Yu had given him. This was Jian Chen's only chance at surviving. Now Yashi Lian was about to do things to him. Yet Fairy Hao Yu still had not appeared. Jian Chen struggled to keep his composure, so he could only use any ideas he could think of to waste time. The tremendous land of the Cloud Plain was split into 5 major regions. They were the northern, southern, eastern, and western regions, along with the central region. Each region was a huge expanse. The Xiandao Empire was one of the few ancient empires in the northern region. The land they occupied was richly endowed, and their territory was extremely large. Even among all the ancient empires in the northern region, the Xiandao Empire could make it into the top 3 without any difficulty. Right now, the imperial capital of the empire was holding a martial competition that was held once every 10,000 years. People had gathered from all regions of the empire, such that the imperial capital became extraordinarily busy. The competition's location was extremely crowded as well. Several dozen platforms surrounded by barriers supported the intense battles between godhood experts. A piece of land 10 kilometers wide hovered above all the platforms. It was covered with precious herbs and orchids, where every single one of them was worth cities. They gave off lovely fragrances, so it seemed like a floating garden. A middle-aged man stood in the garden. He wore dragon robes, and he appeared dignified. His eyes shone as he looked around, vaguely giving off the presence of a god king. He was the emperor of the Xiandao Empire. Beside the emperor were 2 women who possessed otherworldly beauty. They were not old, only in their 20s. The 2 women sat there casually as they ate the precious fruits. They conversed as they paid attention to the competition below, directly ignoring the emperor. The emperor of the Xiandao Empire was not seated. Instead, he stood beside the 2 women quietly while reverence filled his face. He did not dare to speak. "Sister Hao Yu, How do you feel about the performances of this generation's juniors from my empire? One of the women took a bite out of her fruit as she giggled at the woman before her. Fairy Hao Yu glanced down casually and said, "Quite impressive. There are a few talented people who might become god kings in the future." At this moment, Fairy Hao Yu paused. She looked at a young man in the sea of people and said, "But Sister Tian Shuang's disciple is extremely outstanding. There are barely any overgods who can match up to him. He probably already possesses the strength to make it onto the overgods plaque." The woman referred to as Tian Shuang smiled. "Naturally. You need to keep in mind whose disciple it is. In all these years, I've accepted a few disciples, but all of them were disappointing. Only this disciple called Man Yi satisfies me slightly." At this moment, Tian Shuang said to the emperor beside her, "Call Man Yi over." "Yes, ancestor." The emperor replied politely and immediately ordered people to call for him. Very soon, a burly young man flew to the garden. He bowed at Tian Shuang and Hao Yu and said, "Greetings to master. Greetings to senior." There was reverence from the bottom of his heart on his face. "Man Yi, after the competition, go attempt the overgod's plaque. Remember, I want your name to be engraved on the plaque," Tian Shuang said to Man Yi indifferently. She did not leave any room for objection, just like a mighty monarch. She did not treat him with any of the warmth and closeness she had shown Fairy Hao Yu. "Yes, master," Man Yi replied politely. However, he spoke out once again after hesitating slightly. "Master, I have a personal request. I heard that a person who also possesses the battle prowess to make it onto the overgod's plaque has appeared in a small divine kingdom in the southern region. His name is Jianchen, and he's rumored to be extremely powerful. As a result, I wish to fight Jianchen before I go to the central region. I don't believe someone like that can appear in a backwater divine kingdom, so I want to try him out." Man Yi was very much against Jianchen. He had not made it onto the overgod's plaque, yet his name had already reached the northern region. He, Man Yi, also possessed the strength to make it onto the overgod's plaque, but he was basically unknown in the southern region. "Oh really?" Tian Shuang was surprised. She immediately agreed. "I give you permission." Fairy Hao Yu raised an eyebrow. She did not even look at Man Yi and said indifferently, "There's no need for you to go to the southern region. Jianchen and you are on two different levels." Tian Shuang produced an interjection of surprise when she heard that. She stared at Fairy Hao in surprise and asked out of curiosity, "Sister Hao Yu, have you seen this person called Jianchen before? And when you said that he's on a completely different level, are you saying that my disciple Man Yi is on the higher level, or is he on the higher level?" Just when Fairy Hao Yu wanted to say something, her expression suddenly changed. She said, "Oh no, the jade talisman I left with him has shattered. The southern region is just too far away. It's impossible to reach there in a short amount of time. Sister Tian Shuang, lend me your disc of heavenly ways." Fairy Hao Yu spoke rather worriedly. She understood Jianchen. Since he had crushed the talisman she had left with him before, he must have encountered life-threatening danger. Chapter 1930. The northern region. The woman called Tian Shuang could not help but grow curious when she saw how Fairy Hao Yu had changed all of a sudden. She asked in confusion, "Sister Hao Yu, what has happened that made you so frantic? I've never seen you show such an expression before." As she spoke, Tian Shuang also stood up and gently extended a slender finger towards the depths of the imperial palace. With that, a streak of light immediately flew over from the forbidden grounds in the depths of the palace. It moved extremely quickly, arriving before Tian Shuang in a flash. It was a white jade disc that was only 30 centimeters wide. Complicated and profound inscriptions flickered on it, along with a sliver of the might of the world, possessing the power of laws. The disc of heavenly ways was a god artifact. Even many infinite primes only use supreme quality saint artifacts in the saint's world, so a god artifact's value was evident. Even though the disc of heavenly ways was only an auxiliary god artifact, its value was still shocking. At certain times, it would even be far more useful than offensive and defensive god artifacts. The greatest usage of a disc of heavenly ways was that it could teleport people to extremely distant places. As long as someone possessed a disc of heavenly ways, they would be able to reach any place on a plane. It even had the power to transport people across planes. However, each teleportation across planes would cost a tremendous amount. Even God Kings would not be able to endure a cost like that. Sister Hao Yu, here's a 3-colored divine crystal. Tian Shuang passed the disc of heavenly ways to Fairy Hao Yu. She also gave Fairy Hao Yu a pinky-sized divine crystal that shone with 3 colors. Fairy Hao Yu accepted the disc and placed the divine crystal in its center. Immediately, a huge, illusionary map appeared from the disc. The illusionary map completely covered the 5 regions of the cloud plane. Through the illusionary map, one could clearly see that a boundless ocean divided the 5 regions. Teleportation energy appeared, and Fairy Hao Yu vanished from the floating garden, having left the northern region through the disc. The battle between the divine kingdom of Pingtian and the Empyrean demon cult continued in the southern region of the cloud plain. In an obscure cave far away from the battlefield, Jianchen laid powerlessly on the cold, damp floor. The consumption of the power of his soul made him feel great dizziness, and he almost fainted several times. However, he endured it all while gritting his teeth. Yaxilian, your body is too weak. You don't possess what it takes to endure this energy, Jianchen said through gritted teeth as he tried his best to waste time. Yaxilian smiled as she looked at Jianchen coquettishly. Little brother, you don't need to worry for sister. As a 9-tailed heavenly fox, I naturally have my ways of dealing with this problem. Have you ever heard of the balancing of yin and yang? But it doesn't matter if you've heard of it before. I'll show you the joys of the balancing of yin and yang very soon. I guarantee you that you'll fall deeply in love with it. Yaxilian laid on Jianchen gently. She used a handkerchief to slowly wipe away the blood on Jianchen. When her white, soft, and slender fingers came in contact with Jianchen's skin, he felt like it was an electric shock. It was clearly just skin contact, yet when Yaxilian did it, it felt unbelievably pleasant. My cultivation method is different. Even the balancing of yin and yang is useless. Can you balance all the energies in the world through that? Jianchen continued his attempts to distract her. Hee, how will we know if we don't try? If it doesn't work, I'll just give up on it then. Yaxilian blinked her eyes. All her actions were extremely effective against men. Even those with great willpower would struggle to resist it. She said seductively, Little brother, you're trying so hard to turn me down. Am I not pretty? Yaxilian gently wriggled on Jianchen's body while her clothes slowly slid off her body, revealing her snow-white skin. Jianchen bit his tongue firmly. It had already been reduced to mincemeat. Under Yaxilian's tempting and seduction, he was like a tiny boat in the raging seas that could sink at any moment. Very soon, Yaxilian was completely naked. Her enchanting figure was completely exposed. She stood up and giggled flirtatiously. Little brother, am I pretty? Jianchen sighed. With how the situation had developed, it was already useless to try to stall for time. He knew that Yaxilian was about to move on him. Just when Jianchen sank into despair, his eyes suddenly narrowed. He stared behind Yaxilian. A beautiful woman in a white dress had appeared there silently at some time. The woman stood there quietly as she smiled faintly. She stood with her arms crossed as she supported her chin with her hand. She stared at the provocative scene with great interest. The woman's existence was completely like air. Even when she was so close to Yaxilian, Yaxilian still completely failed to sense her. However, when Jianchen saw the woman, he finally let out a breath of relief. He said powerlessly, Since you've come, why aren't you doing anything? To think you'd still be in the mood to watch. With that, Jianchen seemed to lose all his power. His head tilted to one side, and he fainted. What? Who has come? When Yaxilian, who was just about to absorb Jianchen's essence, heard his meaningless words, she could not help but become stunned. She subconsciously looked behind her. With that, her face immediately paled as she became shocked. Who are you? Yaxilian cried out. She actually failed to sense that another woman was standing behind her. Fairy Hao Yu smiled faintly. She shook her head with great pity. What a pity indeed. I almost got to see an interesting show. Though, Jianchen really makes me doubt whether he's an ordinary man, seeing that he can last until now when something this great is presented before him. Yashi Lian became extremely stern. She immediately materialized a set of energy clothes, concealing her body. She wanted to flee immediately. She was not stupid. Not a single god king could appear behind her without her noticing it. This woman could only be an expert at the primordial realm. As soon as she thought that the woman before her was a primordial realm expert, Yashi Lian became shocked. She had never thought that there would be a primordial realm expert behind Jianchen. You little whore. Don't you love showing off your body? Since you like doing that so much, I'll make you do it until you're sick of it. Fairy Hao Yu smiled scornfully, except her smile seemed rather cold. She extended her finger and shot out the power of laws into Yashi Lian's body, sealing up all of her cultivation. The clothes materialized from energy dispersed on the spot. Afterwards, a streak of moonlight expanded from behind Fairy Hao Yu, turning into a domain that bound Yashi Lian's body. It completely immobilized her. Afterwards, Fairy Hao Yu disappeared through the disk of heavenly ways with Jianchen and Yashi Lian. From the start till the end, Yashi Lian failed to put up any resistance at all. She was captured easily. Before Fairy Hao Yu, she did not even have the ability to flee. The battles on the several dozen platforms continued with great intensity in the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire. Countless people watched on. At this moment, the space before the platforms suddenly twisted, and Fairy Hao Yu appeared there. At the same time, Yashi Lian and the unconscious Jianchen showed up there as well. A gentle ball of moonlight surrounded Jianchen. It completely covered his body. As a result, other people were unable to see him. As for Yashi Lian, Fairy Hao Yu had only bound her body. Consequently, not only was she immobilized, but her cultivation had been sealed up as well. She was completely exposed before everyone. Naturally, their appearance attracted the attention of everyone in the royal capital. When they raised their heads to the sky, their gazes all gathered on Yashi Lian's body. Many people revealed lustful expressions. Yet Fairy Hao Yu, a primordial realm expert, actually garnered almost no attention, which was very rare. Yashi Lian was both furious and embarrassed. She could clearly sense countless burning gazes sweep across her body fearlessly, causing her beautiful face to completely sink. After all, showing off one's body to a single person was completely different to showing it off to a huge crowd. Right now, she was completely naked, allowing millions of people to observe and admire her as they pleased. Moreover, some of these people were even as insignificant as ants in her eyes. Many of the competitions on the platforms had even been affected. The competitors stopped their intense battles and looked up, becoming stunned. Fairy Hao Yu, what kind of show are you trying to put on? Tian Shuang stood up from her seat in the floating garden as she stared at Fairy Hao Yu blankly. She discovered that her sister had become somewhat unfamiliar. She had actually done such a strange thing. Was this really her cold and proud sister Hao Yu? This little whore likes to show off her body to men, so I brought her here along the way so that she can exhibit herself. Fairy Hao Yu scoffed. She stepped out and brought Jianchen, who was wrapped up in moonlight, to the floating garden. Chapter 1931. The Imperial Palace of the Xiandao Empire. Little whore? Sister Hao Yu, are you just? Tian Shuang was speechless when she heard Fairy Hao Yu's words. She stared at Fairy Hao Yu in a daze while her gaze seemed like she had just discovered something new. It was filled with amazement and a sliver of disbelief. Even if this person was a little whore that liked to show herself to men, what had it got to do with her? There were countless people like that in the saints' world. Moreover, this person was only a mere god king. With Fairy Hao Yu's status, since when did she become bored enough to play along with a mere god king? At this moment, Tian Shuang actually felt like she could not understand her sister Hao Yu's thoughts. Sister Tian Shuang, let me borrow a 9 refined life-giving pill. Fairy Hao Yu said to Tian Shuang. Tian Shuang immediately became surprised when she heard that. She stared at Jianchen, who was surrounded by moonlight as he hovered behind Fairy Hao Yu, and said, Sister Hao Yu, the 9 refined life-giving pill is a god-tier pill. Are you going to use a god-tier pill to heal this person? Isn't that a little too wasteful? With Tian Shuang's level of cultivation, she was naturally able to see Jianchen despite the surrounding moonlight. Sister Hao Yu, who is this? Is he your disciple? You sure treat him well, even going as far as using a 9 refined life-giving pill on him. Tian Shuang asked out of curiosity. With a flip of her hand, a jade bottle appeared, and she tossed it towards Fairy Hao Yu with some reluctance. Fairy Hao Yu here. That's the 9 refined life-giving pill. I don't have many of them on me. Don't worry, Sister Tian Shuang. I'll give you a healing pill of a higher grade in return in the future. Fairy Hao Yu smiled gently. She took out the round pill from the bottle with great familiarity and fed it into Jianchen's mouth. You can't say that, sister. Otherwise, it'll just make me seem stingy. I just feel that it's wasteful to use such a precious pill on an overgod. Supreme quality saint-tier pills should be enough for his wounds, said Tian Shuang. After consuming the 9 refined life-giving pill, Jianchen's wounds immediately recovered at an unbelievable rate. He healed so quickly that it had even surpassed the regeneration of his chaotic body. As a god-tier pill, it was just too easy for the 9 refined life-giving pill to heal all the wounds on Jianchen, even though it was only of the first grade. In just a few seconds, Jianchen made a complete recovery. He had even replenished quite a lot of the power of his soul. Jianchen opened his eyes. Through the gentle moonlight, he saw Fairy Hao Yu, who stood beside him, in a single glance. Just when he wanted to say something, Fairy Hao Yu waved her sleeve and said, "Go tidy yourself up first." Immediately, Jianchen tore through the air with the gentle moonlight still surrounding him. He had been carried off into the imperial palace of the Xiandao Empire just like that, unable to put up any resistance at all. The emperor and Tian Shuang's disciple, Man Yi, both watched everything unfold as they stood there quietly. They were curious about Jianchen's identity since Fairy Hao Yu had even used a precious god-tier pill to save him. Sister Hao Yu, how do you plan on dealing with this person? You can't leave her there forever. It's disruptive to the social graces, said Tian Shuang as she pointed at Yaxi Lian, who was immobilized in the air. Fairy Hao Yu glanced at Yaxi Lian indifferently before sitting down. She said, "This woman likes to show off her body to men anyway, so let's just leave her be for now. We'll deal with her once he comes back." As she said that, Fairy Hao Yu glanced at Jianchen, who she had tossed into the imperial palace. A sliver of an evil smile appeared on her face, which made her seem slightly mischievous. In the depths of the imperial palace, there was a steamy open-air hot spring. Pleasant giggles rang out from there as 2 beautiful women played around happily in the water. Surrounded in moonlight, Jianchen directly fell out of the air powerlessly, directly landing in the hot spring. He just happened to land between the 2 women. Immediately, there was a huge splash in the hot spring, causing all the water there to churn. The hot spring was a heavily guarded place in the palace. Clearly, the 2 women who played around had never expected someone to fall out of the sky and directly into the hot spring. They could not help but become stunned as if they had not realized what had happened. Fairy Hao Yu had thrown Jianchen into the water right after he woke up. He had not even managed to understand what was happening around him. He saw a beautiful woman standing naked in front of him with a single glance before he could even gain his bearings, which stunned him as well. He did not realize what had happened either. However, the 2 women's reactions were far faster than Jianchen, who had just woken up without completely replenishing the power of his soul. 2 screams immediately rang through the entire imperial palace almost simultaneously. The 2 women both materialized clothes out of energy to protect themselves as fury burned in their eyes. They gripped their swords in embarrassment and humiliation before charging towards Jianchen from behind and in front. At that moment, the 2 of them were even ready to die. Not only had a man seen their naked bodies, but the man was naked as well and also in the hot spring. This was something they could never accept. It's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Please calm down, ladies. Jianchen dodged the attacks from the 2 women frantically. Without even trying to clean the blood off himself, he took out a set of clothes in a hurry and ran off as a blur. Right now he had no idea that Fairy Hao Yu was messing with him, purposefully throwing him in there. Where did this pervert come from? Don't you dare run away. I'll never stop until I kill you. Pervert. This princess will skin you alive and remove all your tendons and chop you to pieces. The two beautiful women chased behind Jianchen furiously, with killing intent. Quite a powerful pulse of energy covered their entire bodies, completely obscuring their appearances. However, the two of them were only gods, so how could they catch up to Jianchen? In the blink of an eye, they had lost track of him. Quick, capture that pervert. We can't let him escape, one of the women screamed out. Her voice rang through the entire imperial palace. Immediately, the entire imperial palace was mobilized. Squadrons of powerful guards rushed over with lightning speed. There were quite a few overgods among them. Why are there so many experts in the surroundings? Where has Fairy How You brought me to? Jianchen immediately felt pained when he sensed the powerful presences in the surroundings. Right now, he felt like he had just woken up from a dream, and he was still confused and dazed. He had no idea what was going on around him. He wanted to study the surroundings with the senses of his soul, but it was just too heavily suppressed here. With the power of his soul still depleted, the senses of his soul were basically useless. Sir, please state your identity. At this moment, 4 middle-aged men appeared around Jianchen. They stared at him emotionlessly. Their powerful presences had already locked onto Jianchen. Jianchen's face changed slightly. The 4 middle-aged men were actually all god kings. Fairy How You, Tian Shuang, and the emperor who observed the competition below with great interest naturally noticed the situation within the imperial palace. The face of the emperor twitched unnaturally. After bowing to Tian Shuang and Fairy How You, he hurried off. Sister How You, I never thought you would actually have a knack for something like this. Looking at how horrible his condition is, you sure have given this little overgod a hard time. Sister How You, I'm becoming more and more puzzled about the relationship you have with this overgod. Tian Shuang giggled. Fairy How You also smiled faintly. She seemed to take great pleasure when she saw how helpless Jianchen was. She said, Don't you look down on him. Making him suffer really is quite a difficult thing to achieve. Sister Tian Shuang, let's go over as well. Otherwise, he would be in quite some trouble. Chapter 1932. Forceful questioning. The 4 god kings of the Xiandao Empire blocked off Jianchen. When he felt the tremendous pressure fall on him, he immediately felt like he was carrying a mountain on his back. Apart from the 4 god kings, countless experts and soldiers poured in from all directions like a flood. In the blink of an eye, they had completely surrounded Jianchen. However, due to the 4 god kings, they did not attack Jianchen, who had intruded on the imperial palace. Before the 4 god kings who had trapped Jianchen understood his identity, they naturally did not dare to touch him. As god kings, they were clever and careful people. Even when ignoring just how heavily guarded the imperial palace was and how tight the defenses of the formations were, just the number of god kings hidden within the palace made it a place that an overgod could not break through. Yet, not only did this overgod make it past the god kings and appeared in the palace silently, but even the numerous formations were rendered useless against him. Clearly something was off. Greetings, Your Majesty. At this moment, all the guards in the surroundings called out. Jianchen gazed over, and saw a dignified middle-aged man in dragon robes with a striking appearance. The man hovered in the air. He was the emperor of the Xiandao Empire. Your Majesty? Jianchen became slightly suspicious. He quietly looked around. Even until now, he still had no idea where he had come to. Although he had guessed that he had come to an empire, he was unsure as to which empire. The emperor hovered in the air and stared at Jianchen indifferently. He seemed to be studying him closely as if he wanted to understand Jianchen's ins and outs. Pervert, where do you think you're going? Die. Behind, the 2 women from the hot spring had finally caught up. They directly ran through the crowd with their swords that shone with laws as embarrassment filled their faces. They stabbed at Jianchen with their swords mercilessly. Jianchen sighed gently. At that moment, a rare sliver of innocence appeared on his face. He did not dodge the strikes from the 2 women at all, directly enduring it with his body. He was indeed very much innocent because he had been thrown in there by Fairy How You when he could not resist at all. He did not even possess the power to put up a struggle when Fairy Haoyu's moonlight surrounded him. So he was thrown into the hot springs that the two women were in just like that. The god kings of the empire did not stop them. Two gods were unable to threaten an over-god's life. The four god kings around Jianchen stared at him carefully. Once he moved, they would grab him without any hesitation. The outcome was clear. Even when the two women used their full strength, they failed to injure Jianchen at all. Jianchen used the toughness of his body to easily endure their attacks. What a tough body. The eyes of the emperor and the four god kings all narrowed as they felt surprised inside when they witnessed this. Clearly, the two women became stunned as well. Disbelief filled their faces. Soon afterwards their faces paled, and they said, "Father, kill this person, please. If this person remains alive, we'll never be able to vent our hatred." "That's right. Father, kill this person, please. You can't let him leave alive." The two women pleaded as they stared at Jianchen with resentment. Their gazes filled with hatred basically made it evident that they wanted to skin Jianchen alive. "Princesses, I'm a victim too. With my strength, how would I be able to make it through such powerful formations? Someone else is behind all of this. I am willing to find the person behind this and have them give you an explanation," Jianchen said righteously with a serious expression. He felt extremely furious inside. He was seriously annoyed by Fairy Haoyu. When the princesses heard that there was someone else behind it all, their faces immediately sank. Just when they wanted to say something, the emperor raised his hand to stop them. He said without leaving any room for disagreement, "Enough. We'll talk about this in the future. Xing Erlan, you go back first. Let's all disperse." The emperor clearly directed his last sentence towards the guards in the surroundings. "Yes, Your Majesty." The many experts gathered in the surroundings all retreated. The four god kings who had surrounded Jianchen naturally understood that the overgod before them possessed quite a great background, seeing how the emperor did not plan on looking into the matter. They glanced at Jianchen deeply before disappearing silently. "Father, you have to help your daughters." The two women panicked, and their faces became filled with grievances. Naturally, they could tell that the emperor did not plan on looking into the matter. The emperor sighed secretly. He felt extremely helpless. He personally saw the senior that even his ancestor had to treat with the utmost respect throw Jianchen in there. Even if he wanted to follow through with the matter, he was not bold enough. At this moment, Jianchen's eyes narrowed. He stared at Fairy Haoyu, who made her way over from afar, and he said with an ugly expression, "Fairy Haoyu, you need to give me an explanation for this." Jianchen spoke boldly. He was very angry after Fairy Haoyu toyed with him. Unlike Jianchen, the two princesses of the empire both bowed politely. "Greetings to ancestor, greetings to senior." The emperor's face immediately froze when he heard Jianchen's bold, disrespectful words. Even Tian Shuang's disciple, Man Yi, became stunned when he heard Jianchen's words. An overgod had actually spoken like this to a primordial realm expert, even saying that he wanted an explanation. They all doubted their ears at that moment. Tian Shuang's gaze turned cold and became rather sharp. Haoyu was the sister she admired and respected the most. She was even more protective of Haoyu than herself. Now that a mere overgod had actually spoken to her most respectable sister like that, she found it to be completely unforgivable. However, in the next moment, when she saw Fairy Haoyu's expression, she became slightly stunned. At that moment, she basically doubted whether the person before her was still her sister Haoyu or not. All she saw was Fairy Haoyu smiling faintly, taking pleasure in the misfortune of the overgod. She did not seem angered at all. "What explanation do you want?" Fairy Haoyu stared at Jianchen with a wide smile. She felt delighted for some reason when she saw just how helpless Jianchen was. Chapter 1933. Xinger and Lana Yu. Jianchen stared at Fairy Haoyu furiously. Just when he wanted to say something, he seemed to think of something else, and his anger deflated like a balloon. He said, "Whatever. You've saved me twice before after all. I won't dwell on the matter this time with you." Jianchen was helpless. He could only resign himself to the matter this time. After all, Fairy Hao Yu had become an existence powerful enough for him to look up to after recovering her body. But you need to explain to the two princesses clearly that this has nothing to do with me. And you're behind it all, Jianchen added. Fairy Hao Yu looked at Jianchen as if she was forcing back her smile. She asked in fake surprise, "What was I behind?" Jianchen, do you have any evidence at all? Princesses, did you see me throw this person in there? Fairy Hao Yu's question immediately left the two princesses slightly bewildered. They felt wronged, and it seemed like they were about to burst into tears. They had no idea how to answer this question. The person before them was an existence equivalent to their ancestor. Her status was so great that even they, the princesses of the empire, struggled to remain composed. Even the emperor would find it very difficult to see his ancestor, a primordial realm expert normally, let alone them. If it were not for the fact that the ancestor had come out of the forbidden grounds to see the sister she had not seen for many years, she probably would not even show her face for several tens of thousand years. They were paramount existences in the Xiandao Empire, just like gods. The two princesses felt indescribably nervous before people like them. The two princesses could not help but secretly glance at Jianchen. Evident fury still burned in their eyes. However, what stunned them was how Jianchen behaved completely differently from them. Facing the two primordial realm experts, Jianchen showed no respect at all. He stood there in a composed manner as resentment filled his face along with some anger. He stared viciously at the senior that even their ancestor had to treat politely. The two princesses could not help but become curious along with their resentment when they saw how composed Jianchen was. However, humiliation soon drowned out their curiosity. They gritted their teeth as hatred filled their eyes. Sister Hao Yu, stop toying around with the juniors. Look at how much you've scared them. Tian Shuang rubbed her temples as she felt very speechless. She could not see the point in Fairy Hao Yu's actions at all. They were both primordial realm experts, so the weak juniors before their eyes were like ants. How would they be bored enough to toy around with them? Moreover, Hao Yu had always appeared to be cold and proud in her eyes. Suddenly, she had become so mischievous, actually playing around with juniors out of boredom. Tian Shuang really found this difficult to adapt to. Xing'er Lan'er, you are dismissed, the emperor said with a dignified voice. Yes, father. The two princesses bowed towards the emperor, Tian Shuang, and Hao Yu. Tears of being wronged flickered in their eyes as they glared at Jianchen viciously. They departed in very low spirits as they pouted their lips. They had guessed that Jianchen probably had some connections with the senior that even their ancestor received politely. With such a powerful person supporting him, it was impossible for them to make up for any grievances they had suffered. Even their father would not be able to help. Fairy Hao Yu could not help but smile when she saw Xing'er and Lan'er leave as if they had been wronged. She said, "Don't act like you've just suffered a lot, you little girls. If the two of you can become his wives, the Xiandao Empire will definitely rise up in the future. All the generations, both past and future, will benefit from it. I'm only giving you a good start. Whether you can grasp this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity or not will be up to your choices." Fairy Hao Yu, what are you blabbering on about? Jianchen stared at Fairy Hao Yu with a pale face. He had no idea what Fairy Hao Yu was trying to pull. Jianchen, I'm not just toying with you. These two girls aren't as simple as they seem. Fairy Hao Yu's voice rang out in Jianchen's head. Lan'er and Xing'er immediately felt their faces heat up slightly when they heard Fairy Hao Yu's words. Even after they had walked quite far away, they had almost become furious from the embarrassment. If someone else had said that, they would definitely chase them down regardless of the consequences and cut out their tongue. However, they did not dare to try something like with Fairy Hao Yu. As a result, they could only act like they did not hear it, quickly leaving the place. However, the emperor and Tian Shuang, who believed she understood Fairy Hao Yu better, stared at Jianchen in shock once they heard that. The two of them refused to believe that Fairy Hao Yu would spout lies. Clearly, the puny overgod before them was far more complicated than he seemed since she had said something like that. Sister Hao Yu, may I ask who this little brother is? Tian Shuang stared at Jianchen uneasily as she became serious for the first time. This was the first time she had stared at a mere overgod so seriously ever since she had reached the primordial realm. He's Jianchen, said Fairy Haoyu. Jianchen. A sliver of doubt appeared on the faces of Tian Shuang and the emperor. They found the name to be extremely unfamiliar. They had not heard of any ancient, powerful organizations that used a surname like that. However, Man Ye's eyes lit up. He stared at Jianchen closely and said, "Are you that Jianchen from the southern region?" People as great as the emperor and Tian Shuang naturally would not know of Jianchen's name, but Man Ye was extremely familiar with it. This was because he had once experienced envy towards the owner of the name. Jianchen had not even made it onto the Overgod's plaque, yet his fame had already spread through the entire southern region and reached the northern region. He was so renowned that he was far more famous than Man Ye, who was also rumored to possess the strength to make it onto the Overg's plaque. Jianchen of the southern region? Jianchen became slightly doubtful when he heard Man Ye's words. Why did he add southern region to it? Was he no longer in the southern region? However, it clearly was not the time to consider this question. He clasped his fist and said, "I am indeed Jianchen. I just wonder if I am the same Jianchen brother Man Ye speaks of. After all, there are many people that share the same names and surnames in the world." "It is you. You're the same as in the rumors." Man Ye studied Jianchen closely. Afterwards, he began to radiate with battle intent. He took a step forwards and stared at Jianchen sharply. "Jianchen, I want to challenge you." "Do not be rude," Tian Shuang said emotionlessly. She only cared about one thing right now, which was just what background Jianchen possessed such that her sister Haoyu would praise him so much. Man Ye's presence immediately froze up and deflated like a balloon, disappearing completely in a single instance. He said politely, "Yes, master." Fairy Haoyu glanced towards the imperial city and said to Jianchen, "That little whore is still there. Jianchen, come with me. It's time to deal with her." With that, Fairy Haoyu directly flew off. She did not move particularly quickly. Behind her, Jianchen hesitated slightly before immediately following along as well. He arrived in the floating garden with Fairy Haoyu. With a single glance he saw Yashi Lian, who dangled in the air. At the same time, he also saw the huge crowds gathered below. This sight immediately stunned Jianchen. Fairy Haoyu had actually left the commander of the 7th Army of the Empyrean Demon Cult, Yashi Lian, dangling in the air naked so that countless people could admire her as they pleased. He did not dare to imagine just how great the commotion would be if the news made it back to the Empyrean Demon Cult and the divine kingdom of Pingtian where the war was happening. Chapter 1934. The She Emperor 1. Jianchen, who is this little whore? How do you gain her attention? Fairy Haoyu stared at Yashi Lian as she spoke on the floating gardens above the platforms. She's the commander of the 7th Army from the Empyrean Demon Cult. Afterwards, Jianchen told her the rough details of the war between the divine kingdom of Pingtian and the Empyrean Demon Cult. However, he hid the fact that a god king from the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds had ambushed him. "I never thought she'd be a commander of the 9 armies of the Empyrean Demon Cult. This time, the Empyrean Demon Cult really has made some extremely big moves. They've split their 9 armies into 3 to attack the southern, northern, and western regions. It's such a big move that just the 3 vice leaders in the branch of the Cloud Plane definitely would not have been behind it. That is because if they don't control it well, the outcome will be extremely severe. Not a single one of the 3 vice leaders can afford to take the blame. This is probably related to the great elder of the Empyrean Demon Cult," Tian Shuang said sternly. Even someone as powerful as her became serious when the Empyrean Demon Cult was mentioned. Afterwards, Tian Shuang looked at Fairy Haoyu and said sternly, "Sister Haoyu, listen to me. It's best if you don't take part in the matters regarding the Empyrean Demon Cult." Fairy Haoyu glanced at Tian Shuang after hearing that. She said, "Sister Tian Shuang, you should understand me. Do you think I'm a person who fears death? When I want to do something, no one can stop me. Not even my father." With that, Fairy Haoyu looked at Jianchen once again. She said, "Jianchen, the wounds that were on your body possess traces of laws on the level of God Kings. But it doesn't seem like they came from the little whore. It's not that I'm looking down on you. But with your current strength, that little whore can finish you off without the slightest effort, and you wouldn't be able to put up a fight at all. Yet, the wounds on you clearly came from a battle against a god king. Were there other god kings from the Empyrean demon cult who fought against you? A vicious light flickered through Fairy Hao Yu's eyes, but no one sensed it. Jianchen shook his head and said with a rather sunken face, "It's not the Empyrean demon cult, but someone from my own side. However, I will personally settle this matter." Fairy Hao Yu did not delve into the matter, seeing how Jianchen was unwilling to elaborate. She reached out with her hand, and Yaxi Lian, who was trapped in midair, immediately flew before her. She stared at Fairy Hao Yu in both humiliation and anger. With Yaxi Lian's status in the Empyrean demon cult, even the other 8 commanders had to treat her politely, yet she had been humiliated like this today. Even though she was a 9-tailed heavenly fox and naturally skilled in charm, she was not as sexual as other people described her to be. As a matter of fact, she had never shown herself to a single man before Jianchen for cultivation. Even when she absorbed the vitality of some men, she would just plant her head against theirs. Only Jianchen had been an exception due to the special characteristics of the energy within him. It was extremely powerful and filled with a power of destruction. So Yaxi Lian did not dare to devour it so easily. She could not find any other method, so she decided to absorb it through the method of balancing yin and yang. That was why she had revealed herself before Jianchen. She wanted to control Jianchen's mind using her natural charm as a 9-tailed heavenly fox, so that she could get him to cooperate. As a result, although Yaxi Lian was a 9-tailed heavenly fox, she had always maintained her purity, and was very proud. Yet now, Fairy Hao Yu had actually dangled her naked self in the middle of the air in public, allowing countless people to look and admire her body. It was impossible for her to endure something like that since she had never shown herself off to a man before Jianchen. Everything that had happened today would definitely remain as a permanent stain to her name. However, Hao Yu was also a terrifying primordial realm expert, so even though she felt absolutely furious, she did not dare to say anything. She only stared at Fairy Hao Yu furiously. However, she had already buried this hatred deep within her heart. Fairy Hao Yu directly ignored Yaxi Lian's anger. She said to Jianchen, "How do you want this little whore to die?" "Sister Hao Yu." Tian Shuang hesitated as she became slightly worried. She really did not wish for Fairy Hao Yu to get involved with the grievances of the Empyrean demon cult. The Empyrean demon cult was simply too powerful. A single branch on the cloud plane had led to such a bloody storm. Even they, the empires, did not dare to wipe them out directly. They could only block them and protect their own territory. Even the organizations that stood at the apex of the cloud plane did not dare to do anything to the Empyrean demon cult. Jianchen glanced at Tian Shuang and sank into his thoughts. He said after a while, "Fairy Hao Yu, I want to keep her alive for now. The Empyrean demon cult is currently waging war against the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Keeping a commander as a hostage might be extremely useful to the situation." Fairy Hao Yu glanced at Jianchen deeply and smiled slightly. "All right then. Since you want to keep this little whore alive, I'll spare her. I've already sealed up her cultivation, so she can't use her strength as a god king at all. As a result, you don't need to worry about any threats from her. You can leave her by your side so that she can serve you in the next few days. You can enjoy this little bitch." Jianchen let out a breath of relief when he heard Fairy Hao Yu's words. In reality, he did not wish to see Fairy Hao Yu fall out with the Empyrean demon cult because of him, as it would basically mean he doomed her. However, Fairy Hao Yu's words towards the end made Jianchen speechless. He discovered that after Fairy Hao Yu had recovered her strength, she seemed to develop a hobby of toying around with people, making her seem completely different from her cold and stern past self. Tian Shuang also stared at Fairy Hao Yu strangely. If it were not for the fact that she had heard it herself, she would not believe her sister Hao Yu could actually say something like that. Jianchen is actually able to converse with the primordial realm expert so casually. What is his background? The emperor stood to one side as he constantly guessed at Jianchen's identity. He had already thought through all the peak organizations he knew on the cloud plane. Fairy Haoyu's previous words had been deeply embedded in his head. If roping in Jianchen could really allow the Xiandao Empire to rise up, then he really would be interested in betrothing his 2 daughters to Jianchen. Suddenly the emperor's face changed. He took out a jade talisman from his space ring with a flip of his hand, and immediately extended the senses of his soul into it. Afterwards, a sliver of helplessness appeared on his face. "Ancestor, please." The emperor passed the talisman to Tian Shuang. Tian Shuang also extended the senses of her soul into the jade talisman after accepting it. She sighed gently after learning its contents. Who knows what this Shi emperor is doing now? Do what he asked for. We can't disobey him and disrespect him over something as small as this. Sister Tian Shuang, what is wrong? Fairy Haoyu asked curiously. It's a message from the Shi emperor of the Shi Empire. The Shi emperor wants all the empires in the northern region to close off their regional teleportation formations. Sigh, ever since he became emperor, who knows how many times this has happened already? But every time he asks for us to close the teleportation formations, there will be deaths of expert from the imperial family, personally slain by the Shi emperor. And there are plenty of primordial realm experts among them. Tian Shuang sighed gently. When she mentioned the Shi emperor, angst appeared in her eyes. What? This Shi emperor will even kill primordial realm experts of the imperial family? Fairy Haoyu was slightly stunned. Exactly. Who knows what the Shi emperor is trying to do? Ever since he ascended to the position of emperor, the imperial family of the Shi Empire hasn't gotten any peace. Not only has the Shi emperor killed a lot of infinite primes, but he has even killed most of the other princes. There are only 1 or 2 of them left from over a dozen in the past. They all fear the Shi emperor dearly, said Tian Shuang. Fairy Haoyu remained silent for quite some time after hearing that. She felt that the Shi emperor had simply gone mad. He had even killed so many infinite primes that belonged to his own family. All of these experts would be worshipped ancestors wherever they went. Jianchen also felt shocked. Infinite primes were existences that he could only look up to. They were peak experts. Once a divine kingdom possessed an infinite prime, they would immediately be elevated to the status of empire. However, from Tian Shuang's words, infinite primes did not seem to be that valuable at all since the Shi emperor had killed a lot of them just by himself. This was simply too shocking. At this moment, terrifying shockwaves of energy swept across the sky above the imperial capital. A transparent, blue barrier had suddenly appeared in the sky. The barrier seemed thin, but the energy it contained was so terrifying that it shocked even Jianchen. Tian Shuang stared at the energy barrier, and she became very stern. She said, "That's the heavenly disorder array at the capital. I never thought the Shi emperor would actually activate this formation. The Shi Empire has sealed off the entire northern region now. No one can leave, and even teleportation formations are rendered useless, including the Disk of Heavenly Ways. Looks like the Shi Emperor is moving against someone important." At this moment, the power of laws in the surroundings suddenly became chaotic. Deafening booms rang out from outer space, where the terrifying shockwaves of energy swept out like storms. It caused space to twist and shatter, creating great cracks. Jianchen gazed over. In the distant outer space, he could vaguely see 2 bodies of light completely condensed from laws constantly collided with each other. Each collision would erupt with devastating might. It was truly startling. That's a battle between 2 chaotic primes. Fairy Haoyu also stared at the sky as she said nonchalantly, "One of them is the Shi Emperor, while the other one is an ancestral emperor of the Shi Empire, who is also the current Shi Emperor's father." Tian Shuang recognized the 2 of them with a single glance. She sighed gently. Every time the Shi Emperor wants to move against someone important, the ancestral emperor would come to stop him. Who knows how many times the 2 of them have fought since he became the current Shi Emperor. Chapter 1935. The Shi Emperor, 2. Then why is the Shi Emperor moving against his own people? Even going as far as fighting the ancestral emperor? Moreover, he's killing infinite primes. Can he really go as far as killing them? Isn't he worried that the Xi Empire will become greatly weakened? Fairy Hao Yu asked out of curiosity. Tian Shuang sighed gently. It's not just greatly weakening. The Xi Emperor has already fractured the current Xi Empire. He has killed many of the infinite primes in the imperial family. They'll probably struggle to recover without a few 100,000 years. But the Xi Emperor sure is vicious. Not only are there people who had joined the Xi Empire among the infinite primes he killed, but there are also older family members and his own brothers and sisters. Without a single exception, all of them are dead. However, this Xi Emperor is extremely impressive. Soon after he became emperor, he became a chaotic prime. As a result, even though the empire has lost many infinite primes, the Xi Empire's overall strength hasn't decreased at all with the Xi Emperor's breakthrough. Tian Shuang hesitated after reaching there before continuing. I think the reason why the Xi Emperor is acting like a madman, turning on his own primordial realm experts, is because of what happened over 2,000 years ago when the previous Xi Emperor abdicated. He was still a prince of the empire back then. Oh, let's hear about it? Fairy Hao Yu stared at the battle in outer space closely as she felt very much curious. Jianchen also listened carefully. He also felt extremely curious about the reason why the Xi Emperor acted like a madman and killed so many of his own infinite primes, even going as far as fighting his father. Infinite primes were revered basically wherever they went. Even in ancient empires, they were existences akin to ancestors. The Xi Emperor was actually even willing to kill people like that. Even the trapped Yaxi Lian seemed to forget the fact that she had been reduced to a prisoner. The battle in outer space had also garnered her attention while she had eavesdropped on everything that Tian Shuang had revealed. After a moment of silence, Tian Shuang said, in the past, when the current Xi Emperor was still a prince, he possessed extraordinary talent. He shone the brightest among all the princes of the Xi Empire, overshadowing them all. Even the old emperor paid special attention to him. Naturally, the Xi Emperor was the person who was the most likely to succeed as emperor. In any empire, there is always a fierce struggle amongst the princes to become emperor. The glory of the Xi Emperor naturally attracted the envy of the other princes. He became the greatest obstacle to many of the princes who wanted to become emperor. As a result, all the princes in the Xi Empire treated him as a thorn in their side. They all wanted to eliminate him. However, in all those years, the Xi Emperor never focused on the position of emperor. He thought of it as nothing, showing no intention to take part in the struggle for it. As a result, the princes never moved against the Xi Emperor. Several thousand years ago, the old emperor became a chaotic prime and was about to abdicate. However, he wanted the current Xi Emperor to take up the position, which naturally resulted in the displeasure of all the princes who wanted to become emperor. As a result, the princes all moved against him secretly to eliminate him. Tian Shuang's expression changed slightly when she reached this point. As she stared at the Xi Emperor, who fought against the ancestral emperor in outer space, a sliver of sympathy and understanding appeared in her eyes. She continued, the matter that created the greatest stir was when the Xi Emperor and his wife visited his wife's home, and they faced the pursuit of the many princes. The current Xi Emperor had never shown any interest in the position of emperor, so he never bothered to rope in any authoritative members of the upper echelon. While the other princes had all been raising their own factions. They were either supported by senior members of the imperial family or infinite prime subjects. As a result, when they hunted down the Xi Emperor, the people who supported them obviously took part as well. Some of the princes had even asked people who were not a part of the imperial family to hunt him down. At that time, over a dozen infinite primes tried to hunt down the Xi Emperor and his wife, pushing them towards desperation. They almost lost their lives many times, and even their path back to the Xi Empire had been blocked, so there was no hopes of them returning. As a result, the two of them could only flee all over the cloud plain. If it were not for the fact that they were both infinite primes, they probably would not be alive anymore. The hunt and pursuit lasted for many years. With the Xi Emperor's talent, his strength constantly increased while he was being hunted down. When he reached the 9th heavenly layer of infinite prime, he finally returned. After returning, the Xi Emperor, who had never shown any interest in the position of emperor, suddenly changed his mind. He began taking part in the struggle for emperor. With the old emperor's favor and his personal talent, it was certain for him to become the new emperor. He completely overwhelmed the other princes and became the new Shi emperor. However, something had probably stimulated the Shi emperor when he was being hunted down. As soon as he ascended, he was no longer behaved as refined and cultured as in the past. He became extremely forceful, moving against the people who had hunted him down in the past. He killed an infinite prime subject and 2 princes on the day he ascended, but clearly he was not satisfied. When he wanted to kill a second subject, the ancestral emperor stopped him. At the same time, quite a few subjects and senior members of the imperial family joined forces, using more than half of the empire's power to fend him off. Even a few of the peak sects in the Shi Empire took part, placing the Shi emperor back under control. However, none of them had imagined that soon after he became emperor, he would break through again and become a chaotic prime. He became someone equivalent to the ancestral emperors of the Shi Empire. With that, there was no one left in the Shi Empire that dared to disobey him. The Shi emperor also completely ran amok after that, eliminating large groups of enemies that had hunted him down in the past. It did not matter whether they were peak infinite primes, senior members of the empire, or princes. If they had taken part in the pursuit against the Shi emperor and his wife, the Shi emperor would execute them mercilessly. There had even been 2 ninth heavenly layer infinite prime subjects that were personally slain by the Shi emperor. A sliver of amazement appeared in Tian Shuang's eyes when she reached there. Their 9th heavenly layer infinite primes, only a step away from becoming chaotic primes. The Shi emperor has even killed people like that without any hesitation. He's willing to go as far as that, and he is even willing to fight against his father. Fairy Hao Yu also became surprised. Has the Shi emperor gone insane? Even if those people have hunted him down in the past, there's no need to go as far as killing them. Just a slight punishment is enough. After all, they're 9th heavenly layer infinite primes. Even in our moon god hall, we would nurture them like treasured people. Of course, that's only if they don't commit any heinous crimes. Yeah. In the northern region, many people believe that the Shi emperor has lost his mind, or he encountered a stimulation that's too great. Otherwise, why would he change so much and become so vicious and vengeful? He's completely different from before, said Tian Shuang. Chapter 1936. Trapped in the northern region, princes turning on one another during the struggle for the position of emperor is commonplace. But once a prince becomes an emperor, they'll always try to look at the bigger picture in an attempt to maintain the strength of the empire. They'll let go of some past grievances, dish out some light punishments, or exile them to some remote lands of the empire. However, it sure is the first time for me to see something like the Shi emperor hunting down every single one of them. Unwilling to let any of them go, said Fairy Hao Yu. Whatever. That's the matters of the Shi empire. It has got nothing to do with our Xiandao empire. Fortunately, we turned down the princes who had come to our Xiandao empire to ask us to take part in the hunt. Otherwise, the Shi emperor would never let us go. Tian Shuang said with some lingering fear. She felt extremely fortunate. Even she feared the current Shi emperor somewhat. Enough. Shi Ziyun, when are you going to stop this madness? Are you only going to be satisfied if you watch the Shi empire crumble in your hands? At this moment, a thunderous voice boomed out in the sky. The old voice possessed an irrefutable sense of dignity. This was the furious bellows of the ancestral emperor of the Shi empire. In the sky, the Shi emperor continued to fight his father, the ancestral emperor. The power of laws from the primordial realm formed chains, and whenever they collided, they would erupt with devastating might, causing the space there to crack. Father, I've sworn in the past that I will reduce anyone who took part, regardless of who they are, to dust. I will not spare any of them, and I will not show any mercy. Father, if you want to obstruct my revenge, I'll sever our relationship today and leave the Shi empire. I'll have nothing to do with the Shi empire from today onwards. And I will still kill those people. If the Shi empire tries to stop me, I will become enemies with the Shi empire. Another dignified voice boomed out. ringing through outer space with the powerful laws of the primordial realm. This was the Shi Emperor's voice. It was dignified and filled with power. The voice also contained furious resentment and an extremely sturdy resolve. Wei Ziyun, how can you say something like that? Do you want to be the death of your father? Your brothers, those senior members, and those subjects, you've already executed so many of them. Are you still unwilling to stop? Do you really want to destroy this empire? The ancestral emperor said in great distress. Karma in the past will be resolved today. Wasn't this all caused by how you just abdicated and stopped caring? If you stood forward and stopped this in the past, why would all this happen today? Father, it doesn't matter what you say now, the Shi Emperor said coldly. He was extremely determined. Below, Tian Shuang became stunned as she stood on the floating gardens. She said in shock, just how great is this grievance that's enough for the Shi Emperor to even leave the Shi Empire just so he can kill all his enemies? What happened when he was being hunted down back then to make him become so mad? Finally, the battle between the Shi Emperor and the ancestral emperor came to an end after several hours, leaving the matter unsettled. They were father and son. As a result, although their battle seemed intense, it was nothing of that sort. It was naturally impossible for them to harm each other. The battle between chaotic primes in outer space came to an end, but Jianchen continued to stare up. He was unable to calm down even after quite a while. The tremendous power of laws that had been invoked during the battle between the two chaotic primes interwove and radiated with devastating might. It had created a deep impression in Jianchen's heart. Jianchen had never witnessed such a shocking battle. Only after seeing the battle between two chaotic primes did he truly understand devastating. That was truly worthy of being labeled as devastating. Space had ripped several times because of their battle. If it were not for the fact that they were far enough away from the cloud plane, Jianchen even suspected the northern region would crack from their battle. Jianchen finally returned to his senses after who knows how long. He looked around and discovered that Fairy Haoyu and Tian Shuang had already sat down, eating their spiritual fruits leisurely. The various changes in the situation permanently ended the competition on the several dozen platforms below. The host for the competition spoke to the Divine King, then announced that the competition would continue some other day. Jianchen glanced past Yaxilian subconsciously and immediately thought of something. His face changed all of a sudden, and he looked at Fairy Haoyu. Fairy Haoyu, the Shi Emperor's formation has sealed up the northern region, and all the teleportation formations are down as well. Doesn't that mean that I can't return to the southern region anymore? Jianchen seemed to understand that he was no longer in the southern region by now. Instead, he was in the distant northern region. If the southern region was the Blood Sun Empire's world, then the northern region was the Shi Empire's world. Fairy Haoyu glanced at Jianchen and said, "That's right. You can't go back right now. Unless you have a formations master whose skill surpasses the formation, it's very difficult to breach the seal. Even a teleportation god artifact like the Disk of Heavenly Ways is useless." Jianchen's face immediately became ugly when he heard that. He was panic-stricken. Sacred Feather, Houston Ruijin Honglian, and Heiyu were still in the war on the divine kingdom of Pingtian. With their strength, accidents could happen at any time on a battlefield where even overgods would struggle to protect themselves. Back then, even a god king from the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds had tried to ambush and kill him. If he was not there, probably no one would look after them from the divine kingdom's side. Although he was known as a supreme overgod, who could make it onto the overgod's plaque, Jianchen could already tell that no one would give him any special treatment if he did not stand on their side. They might even be looking forward to any accidents that befall on him. This was because none of them wished to see the divine kingdom of Pingtian truly rise up, as it would get in the way of their own interests and shift their status. Although the divine kingdom of Pingtian possessed a primordial realm expert, so they did not dare to move against Jianchen openly, they could easily just ignore any pleas for help. They could even make horrible situations worse. Is there any other way to return to the southern region quickly? Jianchen persisted. He was very worried. He really could not stop worrying about Sacred Feather, Houston, and the others when he was not personally there. Fairy Haoyu glanced at Jianchen and ate her fruit casually. She scoffed. Even the people on your side turned against you, and they even sent a god king. If I had not made it in time, you probably would have been reduced to a shriveled corpse by this little whore. You can't even protect yourself, yet you're still in a hurry to go back to go die. I will settle this debt myself. However, I have many friends on the battlefield. The White Tiger, Houston, Senior Ruijin, and so on are all there. If something happens to them. Jianchen paused as he felt frantic inside. Fairy Hao Yu was surprised. She knew how Jianchen was related to these people. As such, after hesitating for a while, she replied seriously, I don't have any method to take you to the southern region while the northern region has been sealed up by the Shi Emperor. However, you can ask Sister Tian Shuang. As an ancient empire, the Xiandao Empire naturally has regional teleportation formations. Sister Hao Yu, please don't make things difficult for me. Sealing off the teleportation formation was the Shi Emperor's personal request. There are barely any people who dare to not respect the Shi Emperor. Moreover, you too have seen the forcefulness and viciousness of the Shi Emperor. Tian Shuang said painfully. She felt very troubled. Chapter 1937. The God's Fallen Clan Senior Tian Shuang. Do you know any other way to leave the northern region? Is there no place that the Shi Emperor has missed when he sealed up the region? Jianchen asked. He had no idea how long the seal over the northern region would last. He really did not want to stay here for too long, as he was afraid that something would happen to Sacred Feather and the others. It's not exactly impossible. Tian Shuang sank into her thoughts, and she became somewhat serious. She said, the Shi Emperor has indeed sealed off the northern region, but there are a few special places that are unaffected. The God's Fallen Clan is one of them. The God's Fallen Clan? Fairy Hao Yu murmured softly as she became doubtful. She had stayed in the northern region for some time, so she basically understood all the organizations in the northern region. However, this was the first time she had heard of the God's Fallen Clan. The expression of the emperor who stood to one side changed when he heard Tian Shuang mention the God's Fallen Clan. Deep angst and dread appeared in his eyes. The God's Fallen Clan was an existence their Xiandao Empire could only look up to. They were so great that they stood at the very apex of the cloud plane. Even just learning the name of the clan required a certain amount of strength. Even the emperor had only learnt about it after ascending. Tian Shuang explained, the God's Fallen Clan possesses an extremely great status in the northern region. They're one of the organizations that stand at the very peak of the cloud plane. Only they can help you now. Jianchen's heart sank with that. He was depressed. Since the God's Fallen Clan was so powerful, there was no reason for them to help him with his current status. Suddenly, Jianchen thought of an idea. A figure he had not seen in quite a while suddenly appeared in his head. He immediately looked at Tian Shuang with shining eyes and said, Senior Tian Shuang, do you know about the Tong family? The Tong family? You actually know about the Tong family? Tian Shuang stared at Jianchen in surprise. She felt taken aback. Of course I know about the Tong family, but they're not in the northern region. They're in the central region. Sister Tian Shuang, tell me the location of the God's Fallen Clan. Fairy Hao Yu said at this moment. Sister Hao Yu, surely you aren't going to pay a personal visit to the God's Fallen Clan for him? Tian Shuang stared at Hao Yu in shock. She discovered that her sister Hao Yu treated Jianchen like he was extremely special. Fairy Hao Yu had been by Jianchen's side along the way. She understood just how important Sacred Feather, Houston, and the others were to Jianchen. As a result, Tian Shuang felt powerless under Fairy Hao Yu's insistence. She could only tell her the God's Fallen Clan's location. Sigh. Sister Hao Yu, since you're going to the God's Fallen Clan, I can only come with you as well. In the end, Tian Shuang also went with Fairy Hao Yu. The three of them immediately left the Xiandao Empire, while Yaxi Lian was also brought along in the Bright Moon Divine Hall. The emperor stood in the floating garden as he stared deeply at Jianchen as the latter traveled away. The light in his eyes flickered as he seemed uncertain. Fairy Hao Yu's previous words continued to ring through his head. Even Fairy Hao Yu herself had no idea just how great of an impact her previous words had on the emperor. The emperor firmly remembered all of it. Fairy, how you had carried Jianchen along. The speed of a primordial realm expert was truly unbelievable. The linear lightning release that Jianchen took pride in was like a snail's pace before the speed at which the two infinite primes traveled at. Gentle moonlight surrounded Jianchen. He felt like the world flashed by him, as if he was teleporting around as he looked through the moonlight. It was unbelievably fast. Fairy, how you only needed to take a step, and the distance she traveled would take him a day to cover. Before long, the three of them stopped. They had arrived at an ancient mountain range that was extremely abundant in origin energy. The surroundings were remote, without a single person to be seen in a range of 1,000 kilometers. There were only the calls of birds and beasts running among the mountains. Tian Shuang glanced across the empty space. The powerful senses of the soul that belonged to a primordial realm expert directly expanded and fused with the space there, causing it to distort slightly. Very soon, the space cracked open and rapidly turned into a gate of light. A hunchbacked old man walked out, and he said with his old voice, "State your identities." Tian Shuang of the Xiandao Empire has come to visit your esteemed clan. Tian Shuang clasped her hand at the gate of light. "Please wait. I'll pass this up right this moment." The old man directly disappeared back into the gate of light. Jianchen felt extremely shocked as he stared at the gate of light. The God's Fallen clan had actually carved out a region of space as land for their clan. This was the Saints' world. Space was extremely tough here, so carving out a region of space under these circumstances was unimaginably difficult. That alone was enough to show just how powerful the God's Fallen clan was. Even though the God's Fallen clan possessed an extremely great status, they clearly would not decline a visit from a primordial realm expert. Very soon, the old man appeared once again, and led Jianchen's group into the clan. Jianchen's attention was drawn away by the origin energy that was thick enough to almost condense once he entered the God's Fallen clan. He discovered that not only was origin energy extremely abundant within the God's Fallen clan, but even the laws of the world seemed clearer. In such circumstances, cultivation would progress extremely rapidly. It would be fast enough to be described as skyrocketing. There would be no need to absorb divine crystals either. Even comprehending laws of the world would be much easier compared to the outside world. However, Jianchen also became vigilant after he entered the God's Fallen clan. He deeply hid the twin swords in his body. If he were still a deity or a god, he would have never been bold enough to enter the God's Fallen clan, as he would be afraid that a powerful primordial realm expert would see through the truth about him. However, he was already different from the past. He was confident that even primordial realm experts would struggle to see through him, unless they made contact with him. The patriarch is currently waiting in the main hall. Please come with me. The old man led the way. In the end, he brought the three of them to a majestic divine hall. At the same time, a figure shot towards the direction of the God's Fallen clan with lightning speed in the outside world. He seemed to be fleeing for his life, moving extremely quickly. His speed was far greater than Fairy Haoyu and Tian Shuang. "I'm almost at the God's Fallen clan. Shi Ziyun has sealed off the northern region, so the God's Fallen clan is my only hope. Once I'm there, I'll be able to leave the cloud plane through the God's Fallen clan's teleportation formation. No matter how great you are, Shi Ziyun, you won't be able to find me when that happens," the person thought to himself as he gritted his teeth. Chapter 1938. Imperial Protector of the Shi Empire, Shi Ziyun, do you think you can act as you wish in the northern region after you've become a chaotic prime? That's only limited to the Shi Empire. The God's Fallen clan is a place where even you won't dare to make trouble. Not to mention that you were once unsociable, so you lack connections. You've never visited the God's Fallen clan before, so you have no connections to them at all. On the other hand, for all the time I've spent as an imperial protector of the Shi Empire, I haven't been as wasteful as you. I've already befriended several elders in the God's Fallen clan, and I showed kindness to the current patriarch before he took the position. Once I make it to the God's Fallen clan, you won't be able to do anything, even if you're the current Shi Emperor. I won't seek out refuge at the God's Fallen clan. I only want to borrow their teleportation formation. With my friendship with the many elders and the current patriarch, it's impossible for them to not agree to such a small request. The old man hurried towards the God-fallen clan as a strange light flickered in his eyes. This was his only hope of escape. Jianchen, Fairy Haoyu, and Tian Shuang all sat on seats within a majestic divine hall in the God-fallen clan. A rather dignified middle-aged man with quite a striking appearance sat in the center of the hall in luxurious clothes. The middle-aged man was the current patriarch of the God-fallen clan. Jianchen did not even have the right to speak here. The patriarch of the God-fallen clan did not attach any importance to him. As a matter of fact, he had not even glanced at Jianchen, completely treating him as a follower of Fairy Haoyu and Tian Shuang as if he was their attendant. Fairy Haoyu and Tian Shuang handled the conversation with the patriarch. Here, only they, primordial realm experts, possessed the right to speak. Jianchen paid no heed to all this. He seemed to be seated there calmly, but he was secretly worried inside. Whether he could use the teleportation formation to return to the southern region, or not would be up to Fairy Haoyu and Tian Shuang. The patriarch of the Gods-fallen clan is only a god king. It's naturally impossible for a god king to have much power in the Gods-fallen clan. It looks like the patriarch before us can't make some of the important decisions. Jianchen studied the patriarch of the Gods-fallen clan. He guessed that the patriarch was probably equivalent to a caretaker, handling menial, day-to-day matters. Patriarch, I'll be honest. We've come because we want to borrow your clan's teleportation formation. Tian Shuang explained her intentions after exchanging pleasantries. You want to borrow the teleportation formation? The patriarch looked at Fairy Haoyu and said, Have you also been drawn into the matters with the Shi Emperor? That's not the case. Tian Shuang shook her head. This is my sister. Her name is Haoyu. We want to borrow the teleportation formation because my sister has urgent matters elsewhere, but even the Disk of Heavenly Ways has been rendered useless now that the Shi Emperor has sealed up the northern region. As a result, we could only disturb your esteemed clan. Haoyu. Why does this name sound slightly familiar? The patriarch of the Gods-fallen clan mumbled with furrowed eyebrows. Tian Shuang smiled. I don't think you're the only person who is familiar with my sister's name, patriarch. Even in the entire Saints world, any person who possesses a certain level of status will be familiar with it. After all, only people on the God King's throne can shake up the Saints world apart from those who have made it to the apex of the world. The patriarch of the God-fallen clan seemed to think of something when the God King's throne was mentioned. A gleam of light immediately flickered through his eyes, and he stared at Fairy Haoyu in shock. He immediately stood up and clasped his fist. I never thought it would actually be the renowned senior Haoyu from the God King's throne. I have heard of you long ago, but I never thought I'd be able to see you personally today. It really is a great honor for me. The patriarch of the Gods-fallen clan was indeed extremely shocked. He had once felt great admiration towards the person called Haoyu, and even the elders in the clan had spoken about her. He just never thought that it would be a woman. Jianchen was secretly amazed. He could not help but study Fairy Haoyu properly in much surprise. He too had never thought that Fairy Haoyu was once an expert on the God King's throne. I've seen a total of 2 experts from the God King's throne before. One of them is Protector Shui from the Ice Goddess Hall, and she's ranked 9th. The other one is Adriana, who is known as the greatest God King from the God clan. She's ranked in the top 100. I wonder what Fairy Haoyu's ranking was in the past? Jianchen began to wonder. He felt quite curious. However, he clearly could not ask about this in the current situation. You are too polite, patriarch. So about the teleportation formation. Fairy Haoyu clasped her hands. The patriarch of the Gods-fallen clan sighed gently. He appeared troubled. Just when he wanted to say something, his face suddenly changed, and he looked out the hall. Ha ha ha, I haven't seen you in several millennia, and the patriarch remains the same as before. At this moment, an old voice rang out from outside. An old man strode in as he said that. It's the imperial protector of the Shi Empire. The patriarch of the Gods-fallen clan stood up to receive him. He was extremely polite. This imperial protector had assisted him quite a lot for him to become the patriarch. A primordial realm expert. Jianchen determined the old man's cultivation level as soon as he saw him. The imperial protector exchanged simple pleasantries with the patriarch, before also mentioning that he wanted to borrow the teleportation formation. "Sire, you don't know. The ancestor has personally ordered us to shut down our teleportation formation. Without the ancestor's orders, even the elders in the clan would not dare to use it for themselves. And Senior Hao Yu, I don't think I'll be able to help you out with the teleportation formation," the patriarch said powerlessly. "What? Your ancestor personally ordered the teleportation formation to be closed down?" The imperial protector's expression changed when he heard that. His face sank rapidly. What a coincidence. Just when Shi Ziyun sealed up the northern region, you close your teleportation formation as well. Is it to cooperate with Shi Ziyun? That's impossible. It's impossible for Shi Ziyun to be so great that even your God's Fallen clan has to respect his demands. Moreover, he has never had any connections with your God's Fallen clan in the past at all. The light in Jian Chen's eyes flickered when he heard the imperial protector's words. He thought to himself, is the Shi Emperor moving against the imperial protector of the Shi Empire this time? If that's the case, he's a complete madman to even kill imperial protectors. Just what unknown secret is hidden amongst all of this, where it's enough for the Shi Emperor to even turn on his own primordial realm experts? The imperial protector began to speak again. He expressed his desire to stay at the God's Fallen clan for a few days, so that he could catch up with the elders he was familiar with. Imperial protector, the elders are all in secluded cultivation. Moreover, I've received orders from a great elder that our God's Fallen clan is currently undergoing some reorganization, so we aren't able to receive any guests, the patriarch of the God's Fallen clan said reluctantly. Even though he spoke extremely mildly, he still expressed that the imperial protector should leave. The imperial protector's face darkened. He left the God's Fallen clan in a hurry. He could not insist on staying shamelessly after the God's Fallen clan had asked him to leave. Let's go as well. Seeing how the teleportation formation of the God's Fallen clan was closed, Fairy Hao Yu also left the clan helplessly with Jianchen and Tian Shuang. After leaving the God's Fallen clan, the three of them appeared in the ancient mountain range once again. The imperial protector did not leave. He also stood nearby, except his face was extremely ugly. Before him stood a white figure. Extremely powerful laws of the primordial realm had condensed in the space around him, revolving around his body. It gave off a devastating might that caused space to twist and the surroundings to shake. Time and space seemed to fall into a disorder around him. The power of laws concealed his appearance. Only his white clothes were vaguely visible, while his face was completely hidden. An extremely dense pressure radiated from his body. He seemed like the Emperor of Heaven, where his pressure could annihilate the surroundings just by him standing there. The Shi Emperor! Tian Shuang cried out as she stared at the white figure in shock. Fairy Hao Yu and Jianchen both stared at him. Shi Ziyun, do you know how many meritorious contributions I've made to the Empire as an imperial protector? Are you really going to execute me? The imperial protector's face became extremely sunken as he stared at the Shi Emperor firmly. Chapter 1939. Who knows when? That's right. Imperial Protector, you have indeed made many meritorious contributions to the Empire. The Shi Emperor nodded. He did not deny that fact. The Imperial Protector's face softened when he heard that. He thought that the Shi Emperor was going to let him off. However, the Shi Emperor's voice suddenly became icy cold at this moment. An extremely frigid killing intent radiated from his body, and it was enough to cause the surroundings to change. All the birds and beasts in the surroundings fell silent, collapsing onto the ground whilst trembling. But your great contributions can never make up for what I've lost, nor make up for my eternal pain. I can only vent my hatred by killing all the people who tried to hunt me down in the past, the Shi Emperor said coldly. His icy voice was filled with deep pain. Shi Ziyun, although it was dangerous when you and your wife were being hunted down, didn't you still make it back to the Empire safely in the end, just ruffled? You said you lost something. What did you lose? Even if you lost an extremely precious treasure while being hunted down, hasn't all the people you've killed in the past few years been enough? Shi Ziyun, I did take part in this before, but I did not hunt you down. I only pulled strings in the dark and severed your path home. Even if I am guilty, I do not deserve death. I am willing to make it up to you. The Imperial Protector said rather frantically in an attempt to persuade the Shi Emperor. This was because he could not even flee before the current Shi Emperor. They were both primordial realm experts, but the difference between infinite prime and chaotic prime was just too great. It was literally a chasm. Ha 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 ha. The Shi Emperor laughed out loud. He sounded slightly crazy. Severed my path home. You severed my path home. Imperial Protector, if you had not pulled strings in the dark and severed my path home back then, how would the matters develop like this today? If you had not severed my path home, why would I, Shi Ziyun, be so insane today, killing so many subjects, senior members, and even my own brothers in the Empire? Imperial Protector, do you know who I hate the most? Not the ones who tried to hunt me down, but the people who severed my path home. Those people deserve death. When he said that last sentence, the Shi Emperor's voice became extremely cold. He had basically forced those words out through gritted teeth. Immediately, he could no longer resist the fury within him, and he sent his hand flying towards the Imperial Protector. This was the Shi Emperor's furious strike. It possessed the cultivation of a chaotic prime. From this strike, the world fell silent, origin energy stopped flowing, the laws of the world were disturbed, and even space trembled violently, almost collapsing. The strike was extremely great, truly enough to destroy worlds. If it were not for the fact that the Shi Emperor had purposefully suppressed it, the terrifying energy would have been enough to destroy the entire region before the attack had even struck. Obviously, the Imperial Protector would not just wait there for his death. He bellowed out, and a set of god artifact armor appeared on his body, radiating with terrifying pulses of energy. At the same time, a golden and violet duster appeared in his hand. Frightening energy erupted from it like a volcano as he tried to receive the Shi Emperor's strike with his full strength. The Imperial Protector was extremely powerful. When he struck out, he erupted with devastating might. If it were not for the fact that layers of defensive formations from the God's Fallen clan protected the surroundings, probably the entire mountain range would have been demolished because of the strike. After all, he was not as powerful as the Shi Emperor. When the Shi Emperor struck out, he possessed great control over his own energy, and he was able to target his enemies while keeping the surroundings intact. However, when the Imperial Protector struck out, he did not even try to control his strength. He used everything he had right from the get-go. The difference between their strength was simply too great. The Shi Emperor knocked away the Imperial Protector's duster with the strike, and then his hand heavily landed on the Imperial Protector's god artifact armor. The armor was a god artifact. However, its glow immediately dimmed, and the Imperial Protector opened his mouth and spat out blood. His face paled. Tell me, aside from the people I've killed already, who else was involved in the matter in the past? The Shi Emperor stared at the Imperial Protector coldly. Powerful killing intent engulfed the Imperial Protector, showing him no mercy at all. In the past, he had been pushed to the end of his rope. He fled across the entire cloud plain, and he did not even know who many of the people who pursued him were. Although he managed to find out about a few of them and eliminated them mercilessly, there were still a few people who hid very well. Shi Ziyun, just what was it that made you become so vicious and merciless? The Imperial Protector asked. He was unwilling to accept the situation. No matter how he tried, he was unable to connect the Shi Ziyun before him to the indifferent Prince Ziyun who never desired fame or to better other people. Since you won't speak, I'll show you what being merciless means. I have my ways of making you speak once I get back to the palace. A sliver of viciousness appeared in the Shi Emperor's eyes. He bound the Imperial Protector and picked him up brutally before silently vanishing. He had already left the region. Is this in chaotic prime? They're actually so frightening. Jianchen did not return to his senses after the Shi Emperor left. He stared at where the Shi Emperor stood before in a daze. This was the first time he had been so close to a chaotic prime, so the shock he felt was greater than anything in the past. Not only did he feel like he could not breathe when the She-Emperor struck out earlier, but even his heart had stopped beating. His body was completely frozen. It was as if an invisible force had restrained his entire body. The She-Emperor's strength was just too frightening. Even when he was not targeting Jianqin, Jianqin deeply understood his own insignificance. I never thought the She-Emperor would move against an imperial protector of the Shi Empire this time. That imperial protector was an important subject to the Shi Empire. I wonder just what the She-Emperor lost when he was being hunted down that made him become so mad that he would even kill imperial protectors, Tian Shuang said sternly. That's the problem of the Shi Empire. It has nothing to do with us. Let's go, said Fairy Haoyu. With a wave of her hand, moonlight surrounded Jianqin again, and she took him away. Before long, Jianqin had returned to the Xiandao Empire. Due to his connection with Fairy Haoyu, he possessed a rather special status in the empire. The emperor had personally granted him a hall for him to stay in. Jianqin settled down in the imperial palace temporarily, but he could not relax at all. He was basically filled with worry. He locked himself up in his hall all day long as he thought long and hard about any way to leave the northern region. He was very worried about the safety of Sacred Feather, and so on. For several days, Jianqin did not even take a single step out of the imperial palace. However, no matter how hard Jianqin racked his brains, he failed to come up with a single viable method at all. The end conclusion was that unless the Shi Emperor removed the seal over the northern region, he was unable to leave at all. Jianqin had mentioned finding the Shi Emperor, but as soon as he said it, Tian Shuang shut him down, as the chances of that happening was even less significant than using the God's Fallen Clan's teleportation formation. Just as Jianqin was in a state of complete unease, Fairy Haoyu visited his residence. She also sighed gently when she saw the worry on his face. It's all because of me. I shouldn't have brought you to the northern region. Fairy Haoyu, you can't put it like that. If it were not for you, who knows if I'd still be alive right now. I can only hope that the Shi Emperor removes the seal over the northern region as soon as possible, said Jianqin. The Shi Emperor will probably keep up the seal for a while longer. I've just received the news that the Shi Emperor has already gone to one of the peak sects of the Shi Empire, the Heaven-Cracking sect. He asked them to hand over 2 of their great elders. The Heaven-Cracking sect is one of the 4 great organizations in the Shi Empire. The great elders there are all infinite primes. Moreover, they have an even more powerful ancestor. The entire sect only has 3 great elders. The Heaven-Cracking sect will naturally refuse to hand over 2 of the 3, so they've already locked down the sect. They're currently locked in a stalemate. Even the ancestor of the sect has come out to plead for mercy, but the Shi Emperor refuses to budge. There probably won't be a conclusion in the near future, said Fairy Haoyu. Jianqin groaned greatly. The Heaven-Cracking sect was a peak organization in an eternal empire, so they must have been more powerful than the Xiandao Empire. Even the Xiandao Empire had teleportation formations across regions, so it was impossible for the Heaven-Cracking sect to not have one. However, if the situation continued like this, the Shi Emperor would basically maintain the seal over the northern region to prevent the 2 great elders from escaping. So when would he be free to leave? Jianqin immediately felt a headache. He was distressed. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.